Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
I've been looking around for salvation. I've been looking around for the truth. All around me I see frustration, and I looked all over till I found you. I sit and listen to your stories, and you're telling me, please don't worry. A lot in this world you should know, and love in life is where you should go. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then love in life will guide you. I know that life outside.
Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. Now, earlier this month we read and saw video reports of the invasion of the small town of Dalstrom, nestled in the highlands of Mpumalanga, halfway between Gauteng and the Kruger National Park. Let's have a look at a short video of what happened on that day. What we're looking at here is the small town of Dalstrom, and in the first scene you will see the protesters, or rioters really, walking down the street in the middle of the town. This is later in the day. You can see there are well over 100 people there. And this is when the attacks on the actual farm, the town itself started, as you will see in a moment. There you go, you can see the fires that they've set alight in the town itself. Some buildings were burnt to the ground. This is all very unexpected. What we're going to be talking about tonight is exactly what happened, why it happened, and more importantly, how the town is now setting out to defend itself from this happening again in the future. And the blueprint they're developing can be used by any small town, which is a very, very positive development. Okay. Now, let's get to my two guests tonight. I've actually got two guests join me tonight, which is fantastic. Tonight, two residents of Dalstrom join us and discuss what was behind the terrifying events that transpired on that Wednesday, and how the community is working together to establish a blueprint that can be used by small communities to monitor and defend themselves from this sort of situation landing on their own doorstep. So without any further ado, let me get Adriaan and Ian on. Give me a second. Hi, Adriaan.
Hi, Scott.
Good to have you on. Let me just get Ian,
Absolutely.
and then we're ready to rock and roll.
Awesome.
Can you just get your camera on?
I can do that. Just want to check where it is. There we go. Can you see me?
Not yet. I still see just an icon. Oh, there we are. Now I see you. Yep. Gotcha.
Good.
Okay.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
We're ready.
Just waiting for Ian to... It says Ian Boyd is unavailable. Do you want to just give him a call quickly on the phone and just see where he is?
I'll do that. I'm going to mute my microphone in the meantime.
Okay. I'll just keep on trying to get Ian Boyd. You there, Adriaan?
Scott, I'm here. He's just busy trying to sort out that data issue he has at the top, but he'll be with us in a few minutes.
Okay. Is he unavailable, is he?
He's unavailable now, like in the next 2 minutes, but he will be joining us soon.
Okay, because I'll need
I'm
to...
thinking we can get on.
I'll need to Skype him, though. That's the only thing.
Okay, sure. Just give him I think about 2 minutes, and
Okay.
we can then
All
start
right.
off. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. All right, let's get going. Now,
Absolutely.
while we're waiting for Ian, please tell me about life at the little town of Dalstrom. What brought you there?
So, we decided to stay in Dollstrom because of this lifestyle. You know, it's a very quaint little, calm and amazing town with so many wide open spaces and greenery, and it felt like, you know, finally we found a place where we can breathe clean air and not be rushed from the bigger cities, you know. I'm a software developer for the last 13 years, so sitting behind a laptop and not really knowing your neighbors and going out. And when you go out, you're out in streets that you actually don't know people, and
Right.
It's just a rush hour traffic, and you're constantly sitting in traffic for hours on end. It's so much of a waste, really. I see Ian has joined us now.
Yes, he has. Hi, Ian.
Hi, Ed. Hi, how you doing? You well? Good.
Welcome to the
Cool.
Loving Life live stream, Ian.
Thank you very much. Hi, Scott. How you well?
Excellent. Now, we were just
So,
talking
yeah,
about
that's
life at
where we are.
Dalstrom.
Oh, it's fun.
Well, it's been an exciting month for you guys, as I can see.
Well, yeah, it had its moments. It's settled right back now, but yeah, we had a bit of fun and game.
Right. Now, Adriaan, you sent me a lengthy letter about what happened at Dalstrom, and there was one statement that really stood out, and I think it's something you're going to be both addressing tonight. And you said, "Need I state that what happened to Dalstrom is currently happening nationally and will continue to escalate in the future, and thus this discussion." Can you just put a bit of meat to the bone there, what you're talking about?
Yeah, look, we're gonna get into that again, but I think it's good that we call it up now. You know, we have some instability, not some, we've got a lot, and we've got some upset people around us in the entire country. And the way things are going and the research that I've been doing, it's very clear to me that people are getting upset about a corrupt government, and people are getting upset. And when I say people, I include everyone that really sits there and thinks and finally with this COVID lockdown, you had a lot of time to think and reflect back on what's happening and how people are dealing, or the government's dealing with things. So what I'm saying about that is, yes, I mean, even in this week, they've already started announcing the next spate of protest action that's going to happen due to the fact that there's no PPE for certain of the medical workers, and so on and so forth. It's also going into summertime, and also, you know, this COVID thing has had people get fed up, because finally people walk out in the road and they see a leaking, water leaks, for example, in the road that's been there for years, a year or 2 years, and it doesn't matter what you do, that doesn't get fixed. And so that's just some of the reasons, but, you know, I can see this going in that direction, and that's why we're having this discussion, is to see how villages and towns can actually better prepare for that and start talking to each other and get some, and this will be the key word, which Ian will get into as well, you know, how do we get synergy between the different groups that's fighting the same fight? And so we'll get into that as well. You'll see a bit of that.
Right. Well, I've got to say that these protests are pretty well across the board now. Tomorrow we've got the huge bikers rally, which is happening across the country, and they're estimating there will be thousands of bikers taking part in those in centres like Pretoria and Cape Town and Durban. And they're basically, in Cape Town, their aim is to literally shut down the city by going very slowly on the roads. Now, clearly the ANC have really stuffed the country up. Ian, do you have any initial thoughts on this before we get into what happened at Dalstrom?
I think this has been a long time coming, Scott, to be honest. But I think there's been like Adriaan said, the COVID-19 has really emphasized, it's kind of almost like where the cracks had been painted over. Those cracks are really showing now. They've kind of always been there, but we're seeing them a lot more clearly now. But I think as we move through the discussion, we'll actually explore what those cracks are and what could possibly be done about it. But it's not a new thing, and if you look globally, there's things happening around the world where you wouldn't really expect it. I mean, for instance, in the United States, maybe their viewpoint on that is different, but South Africa's had this coming for a long, long time, so I don't think it's brand new. I just think we're seeing, like I say, it's being emphasized with COVID-19, and people are seeing it, and people have maybe, previously where people had to get to work and get home and had their lives to lead, they're now able to sort of to see things a little bit more clearly. They've had the time to reflect on some of the things that are happening in the country.
Right.
So, I think COVID-19 has really just kind of emphasized it as opposed to create anything brand new.
Well, I think the element that was a straw that broke the camel's back was this PPE corruption. I think people were they were hutful about that. They just said, no, this is ridiculous. Now, what I want to do is I want to unpack exactly how what happened in Dalstrom. And if I can go to you, Adriaan, first on this. Now, there were two organizations that were involved in this situation. There was a letter circulated by the Dalstrom Progressive Youth Forum and the Dalstrom Business Forum. Can you tell us what role they played in what led to the trouble that you had, and what was behind the letter?
Yeah, sure. I think what I want to request, if you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen
Sure.
with you guys. Ian, if you want to maybe save on some data on that side, I'm going to do the same. It's just to switch off my video so that the streaming is better. Is that okay with you? Then the focus is on the presentation, Scott?
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. So I'm sharing my screen. Just let me know if you can see it.
Okay. Yep, I see it. Perfect.
Okay, good. Alrighty, yeah. So let's dive right into that letter, Scott. A very important thing that we found. If you let me just jump to that quickly. Okay, so there we go. So we're back online. All right. So yeah, there was a letter circulated to the businesses in town, and it was addressed to the tourism industry. of Dalstrom, and it was done by who were called the Dullstroom Progressive Youth Forum and the Dalstrom Business Forum. And they had 3 points on this letter that they were quite concerned about, and they requested some feedback within a few days from the business owners inside of the Dalstrom town area. Now, the two that I'm referring to, so I'm just going to jump to that, was, if you go look at who they are, is the following. The Dalstrom Progressive Youth Forum, in short, we are the driven youth aimed at finding solutions for community development through participation and facilitation of developmental programs. Our chief objective is to facilitate and support societal participation in various governmental and private community initiatives and projects. We want our youth and community at large to benefit from these projects, referring obviously to government projects. And obviously community that they start themselves with funding from government, and also be able to grow as individuals. We also promote the agenda of radical economic development for the impoverished. So that was the Youth Forum.
Right.
That was one of the signatories to the letter. Then the second entity was the Dalstrom Business and Development Forum. And please, I need to just put a little bit of a disclaimer in here that this information I received from their website direct. So this gave us a clear indication of who they were, and that allowed us to do, and you'll see later what we did with this. So
Right.
As a business-based and member-focused organization, we work to protect and promote the interest of Dalstrom business community. Advocating and influencing policy decisions that affect the interest of business. So these include the labor laws, tax business regulations, etc. Offering business support services and advice like CIPC certificate, all of those legal checks, providing business information relevant to decision-making process. And then they end off by saying, they want to contribute towards creating a conducive economic and business environment in the Dalstrom area and beyond, as well as providing services specifically relevant to small and large businesses, and ending off with, we will achieve this by, and then they provide some advertising of their services right through to the last part, which is all underpinned by ethical governance principles.
Right.
So this was the two forums, and this was who when I read that specific letter, that's who I thought we were dealing with based on what they were saying there. So so what happened next was very interesting. I mean, we got to a point where, for example, I read the signatories of those letters. I read who they were,
Right.
and I recognized one of them as an ex-colleague, not really a colleague, but I'm going to call it that because I don't know what it is in English, but it's somebody that I got to know at another business, and he didn't work for me or with me, but we had a lot of long talks, etc., and that's how I knew him. So based on that, I thought, what? I've got so much time on my hands right now in this lockdown, and one of the things, need I just go back quickly a step, if you don't mind?
Sure, go ahead.
To this is where they raised 3 specific points in the same letter, where they said, why are employees not paid for COVID-19 under the lockdown? That was the first question. The second thing was respond to the ongoing retrenchments and the prioritization of foreigners over locals. So those were the 3 things that they basically lifted out in this letter, and that's kind of the starting point for which I thought, okay, let me
Before you
phone
do,
one.
Adriaan, when they talk about foreigners, we're talking about people from Zimbabwe working in the town. Is that correct? Or places like
From
Zimbabwe?
various places. No, there's quite a diverse amount of people in our town,
Right.
in the township area as well.
But it's from
So
people outside South
Mozambique,
Africa.
Correct, Mozambique and
Yeah,
Zimbabweans,
okay.
etc. So
Right.
so it's not necessarily locals or South Africans. So
Right.
and you'll see why they are upset about that in a bit. So
Okay.
this casual chat was the concept behind it was, instead of going through this whole process, to go into a whole business meeting and everybody have to close their businesses to attend a meeting during a business day, and everybody just opening after COVID. I thought, let me have a casual chat with this guy, buy him a coffee, and talk about some of the points to get behind, get some facts and ask questions and see, what really is happening. This happened on the 3rd of July, by the way, at 10 a.m. And we also had, the letter was stating that the business community needed to get together on the 3rd of August. So if you look at the timeline, we had late July, the letter that was circulated.
Right.
Then we had this call from my side to him to say, listen, let's have a coffee and chat about stuff. And this is then what transpired from that. So I went into the process.
Before you go ahead, Adriaan,
yes.
I just want to address those watching. We've got about 500 people
Correct.
watching at this moment in time. Please remember
Amazing.
to subscribe to the Loving Life channel. We have live streams most nights at 8 p.m. on a variety of subjects. And if you have questions you'd like to ask of Ian and Adriaan, please feel free to put them in the side chat, and I'll get a moderator to copy those questions and paste them later so I can put them to our guests. Sorry, Adriaan, back to you.
No problem. Well, look, I just also want to say then, the process that I wanted to go into was one of where you ask a lot of questions to get to the root cause of a problem and to try and figure out what's going on. Because we've been through this on about a year ago as well, where a letter was circulated. This was pretty much an exact copy of that process that went through there. And so you kind of anticipated the process. So when I met with him the next morning at 10 a.m., we got the coffees ready.
Right.
And in the end, 8 other guys arrived 2 minutes after, and they were fully ready for a full-blown formal meeting. And I said to them, look, I need to just reiterate that this is a casual chat. I cannot speak on behalf of Town. I cannot speak on behalf of anyone. I've got this letter and I've got time on my hands, and I want to offer support in a way. So please don't take this as an official meeting. But they had the whole attendance register, everything going. So anyways, I started questioning, just asking, what does this mean to you? Why are employees not paid COVID? Why are you putting this in a letter? And it was instantaneously, the accusations started flying around where they said, no, look, businesses in town are stealing 50% of those COVID funds. And I said, okay, well, expand on that. Tell me a little bit more about that. How can you make such an accusation? Because this is criminal. And if this is true, we need to look into it. And said, no, truly, because the business are being paid by the TERS and UIF funds into the bank accounts, and only a certain amount then gets paid to the employees. Now, remember, I'm asking questions. I'm not finding solutions at this stage.
Right.
And so I make a note and I shook my head and I continued. And I said, okay, so what is the other reason? And they said, well, businesses have not been compliant regarding the UIF. Now, UIF is the Unemployment Insurance Fund in South Africa, and employees must be registered with them. And then if anything happens, they move on, etc., they can go and claim from the UIF. And in which case, this COVID-19 was a good example of that, where the companies could claim for UIF payouts for the employees who then did not get an income because of the lack of business and customers. So they said that some businesses were not compliant with this UIF process. So I spoke a little bit about that and said, okay, well, what does non-compliance mean to you? Because to me, it means maybe something else. So what is non-compliance to you? And they said, well, they don't register their people and they don't keep the payments up to date, and they kind of listed those items. So making the notes, again, I kind of moved on from that, and they said, look, after the last strike, we got to a point where the Department of Labor were actually saying to them, after the previous, like a year ago strike, about the same things, that people are not compliant. There were some businesses that apparently had cases against them made at the Department of Labor. And I, for one, was not aware of anyone really. I know that the Department of Labor came there and they investigated us, etc., the whole town really. And they said that the problem is that the Department of Labor is taking bribes from non-compliant businesses. And so those businesses are still in operations, and now they're not getting COVID payouts. Okay, so now keep this in mind, because you'll see a common theme starting to form from this point.
Right.
And then the last part was that, I asked them, so what did they say? Did you phone them? Did you follow up on the case? They said, no, they get no feedback and they're not answering them. And they're saying they can't release information about the investigation. Okay, so left there, we kind of moved on to the next point. And wherein, we said, okay, I asked them, how many of your members came to you and complained to say they didn't get UIF? Because now you guys must remember, all of you listening, if I'm going to sit there and, I have to go and help them, I can't sit there for months on end and help. I need an estimated time frame of what availability I can give. So I said to them, could you give me an idea? And they couldn't give me a count. Okay, so I was a bit surprised, and I said, okay, look, what can you give me? What information can you give me about the people who did not get these payouts that you're referring to? And the chairman said, this was about 70%. Okay, so for a moment, that's...
Hang on, so 70% of their members did not receive UIF payments.
Yeah, so they didn't specify their members. So I said, okay, well, cool. So let's take it the very, just 6,000 people in Dalstrom.
Yeah.
And 70% of that is 4,800. I can't help that amount of people. It's going to take me months. So let's break it down. Is it people working? Is it people in your membership? Who are they? And he said, no, it's the working people. I said, okay, fine. So let's just break it down to 400 people. And 70% of that's 280 people. Fantastic. I can help you. I'll even go with my laptop to the town hall, and then let's start looking at those members of yours or those people, and we work through the process, and we can log onto the system and see.
Right.
Now, whilst this was happening, obviously I think it was then that the first outcries were going, or the first news articles were going out about the corruption, about UIF, etc., and they were changing the system, and I don't know what else.
Right.
So this is happening in the background, but okay, so we agreed. Okay, that was now a lot of people that didn't get UIF payouts. So I understood this, I was ready for it, and I said to them, listen, ask your members to just make copies of their IDs. Let's collate it by employer, and if you're ready, phone me, I'll come and help you. And as I said that, I told them as well, I let them know that when the Department of Labour was in Dalstrom, they met with businesses, and majority of the speech then, and this is what I want to tell all of you, that the majority of the speech of that lady in that a year ago speech was mostly about the appointment of foreigners. And there was a theme on that forming already then. Right. Which means that, the Department of Labour was actually telling us, as businesses in a boardroom, there's a database that exists that you can appoint South Africans, and why are we not using that database, and why are we still appointing foreigners? It's not right. We have to appoint our locals, our South Africans. So keep that in mind as we go along, because this is where things started. You see the root cause of things.
Right.
Okay, so knowing that there are a business development forum, and knowing that they're a progressive youth forum, and reading about them before I met with this guy for a casual chat, and them sitting there, I knew, okay, well, there's a little bit of a glimmer of hope here, because it means if they've got that good write-up, they would understand, and they will be willing and able to go through the process with us and negotiate, and let's see how we can diffuse this. So I told them, do you know that your workers don't have to be registered with the Unemployment Insurance Fund? They can actually claim for special COVID-19 payouts, even if they aren't registered, because that was something that was a second rule they made, or law they passed for that moment during lockdown. And they said, no, they weren't aware. And the second thing is, I said, remember, you're also referring here to your domestic workers, your laborers, people who were not necessarily registered for UIF by their employers. But the minimum payout is about 3,500 Rand a month. So this is part of your solution. And you need to take these 3 points, and we need to apply it when we go and look at your members' payouts and understand and find it. And let's help you, because we can basically hammer on this new law that was passed at that stage in order for that other 70% of people to get their payouts, whether they're registered or not.
Right.
Okay, so this is where we ended on that line item. However, so I made the last comment, and I offered another little bit of assistance by saying, look, let me be your contact with the Department of Labour. I'll walk with you with this, and give me a number or something so I can follow up. And they said no. And this was the part where I could kind of pick up that they were not in the mood to even speak to the department. And they said, no, we are going to deal with this by ourselves, because they are not helping us, and they are not serious, and they accept bribes.
You know what I find really interesting here is that the wider African population are now starting to get what is going on with the ANC.
Absolutely.
This is very, very important. Okay, carry on.
I mean, even if you look at this, Scott, I mean, the farmers that went, when we had that other live protest action with the farmers that all arrived, that is one protest march. That's a peaceful march. Yeah. We get marches with the bikers now. We're going to get protest action from so many spheres in our country. Right. That you can actually see this growing, and that's why we are kind of concerned about it for the future. But we're also hopeful, okay, because change needs to be there, but we'll get into that. So I moved on to the next question.
Sure.
And I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because it was a very simple thing. I told them, look, about retrenchments, they have to understand that I cannot answer on behalf of any of those businesses because this was not supposed to be formal, but I can tell you this. They must understand one thing, that a business will not consider retrenchments unless they've exhausted every other possible avenue of a solution. And it is not the business that decides that. It's law that states that they have to go through a process of, first of all, exhausting every other avenue, like short time, like, for example, moving to a different place, cutting costs on certain things. So they have to get that. Retrenchments is always the last part or the last decision after they've really considered those things. And I said to them, they must also understand that the very recent few months, just before the lockdown as well, a lot of the employees or a lot of the staff, the working people, they've all joined a union. And I'm sure that those unions know that this is the process, and they must go to them for help and say, this is, what have you done? Because they've been represented by this union, you see. And so at the end of that, that's the whole process. You can't get upset about this. You can go and visit these businesses, but they've got no legal obligation to actually show you their private business information. They don't have to speak to you about it. But if you approach this the correct way, then they might be able to also do what I'm doing today, buy you a coffee and say, this is where we are. Because I saw broken owners of businesses in this lockdown who lost their livelihoods and their businesses. And I cannot see why you do not see this. Okay, and so we kind of got into that mood, and everybody sat like to the front of their seats, and I could see, look, they're actually in a mood not to be there. But then it went into this, and when I asked them about this point, again, it went straight back to that South African staff are retrenched, but foreigners are kept on the payroll.
Right.
Okay, so that being, again, back to the root cause, back to one of the root items. So we moved on from there, and I said, look, I can't go on that, but I can then ask you about the foreigners because this seems to be the hot topic. And I said to them, okay, look, so explain to me foreigners. Now, just in the questioning before this with the retrenchments, one of the gentlemen got a phone call and he walked out of the building and he was spending time on the phone outside. And I started talking about the foreigners and let them explain to me, what it's about. And as they were starting to say, but you guys must understand that, these guys are stealing our jobs. They are taking our jobs. They are, the businesses in this town need to understand that they need to appoint us and our locals. They mustn't have the foreigners. And I said to him, okay, well, explain to me a little more. And as we get into that, the meeting was cut short. And the guy who was out on his phone, he said, Mr. Chairman, sorry, but there was some kind of miscommunication. And we were to be at another meeting and not this one. And so I kind of saw the relief on their faces because I think they were expecting some other show or something different. And I said to the man that I originally invited for coffee, I said to him, look, my office still stands, but if you walk out that door, just remember that my time may not be as available. So make sure to collect the information from your members and let me know when you're ready and I can come and go through the process with you. And that's kind of where we left the discussion. So they left this meeting on the 30th. They went to the meeting with the DRA, which is the Dalstrom Ratepayers Association. And obviously discussions went on in that process. Now, we don't really have a lot of feedback from that yet, but it was basically kind of the same. They hammered on the points there at the top and they left the meeting, and I wasn't there, so I have no input on that, and I have no information further on that, except for that they said, well, they were just talking to them about these 3 points and trying to discover who they are, who the two groups were. So that was the feedback we got from the DRA. So, okay, the topic tonight. What you see now is not Dullstroom. What you see is nationally taken by various news agencies, and the protests are for various reasons, which ultimately and mostly end up being land or service delivery or pay increases or university fees that they want to, those extreme protests that happen there. Now, I want people to look at the screen for a moment. this is the whole thing. We are so desensitized that when we look at this on news, when we look at this in our own, in your newspapers, on the TV, and you look at this, we are so desensitized to it that it actually becomes a norm for us. When we see this, we go, oh, what's happening again? And the challenge comes in is that when this happened and it becomes kind of a war zone. And what I wanted to say to people is that you have to understand that the UN states that a war is where, a certain amount of people, like I think it was 1,000 people. Let me go back and see if I can find that stat quickly. It will come up on the screen now. But 57 people are murdered in South Africa every day. And if you make that sum, you get to well over 1,000 people murdered each month in South Africa. And that I'm hooking on, and I'm quoting our own police commissioner from a news article that we read, where he was saying actually that, it's a war zone out there. And if you look at protests that's happening in South Africa, and you look at the way it's being dealt with, it always includes fire, damage, riots, strikes, those kind of things, because they're upset about something and nobody's listening.
It's really frustration, isn't it?
It is. It's a big frustration, and I wanted to show this specifically tonight to your viewers, because another thing is also that the people who are in power and leaders are promising things and not giving it, and during this lockdown, that belt was tightened suddenly, and people realized, look, we're not going to get what they're saying,
right?
And this then becomes the destruction. So it is horrendous. And so when I use the word war zone, people, some of my own community even gets upset with me. But if you go look at what it means, and in the times we're living in, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
So here's my $1 million question, okay, to everyone out there. What do we do now as onlookers? So before we get into the Dalstrom thing, what do we do as onlookers? We're tired of the looting and the burning tires, etc. We are tired of that. But here's my personal experience of that specific day, how I felt, how I perceived the immediate threat. And I'm outlining this for those who believe, and even some in our own community, that the issue was blown out of proportion. But I'll show you some photos now. And those who believe that some of us created bad publicity for town. Where were you critics when the rest of us were actually fighting those fires after they've been lighting it, helping the elderly, moving rocks out of the roads, clearing debris, and ensuring that life and limb was protected? That was kind of what we do. We go into a reactive, responsive mode, and we try and clear town, etc. Secondly, to me, it felt and looked like an absolute war zone. Okay, so people were upset. There was chaos, there was singing, there was rocks and fire being thrown and set. As these protesters moved very strategically through the streets, they knew the route they were going to take. They had communications, they had spotters on their phones, they are taking pictures and making calls and identifying businesses that were open and doing business during this strike. Okay, here's a bit of an example from one of the eyewitness videos that was captured. So the chanting and the singing and the screaming.
Is this a Dollstrom?
Really, this is our Dalstrom. So everything from this point forward, you will see, is now Dalstrom. Okay. Right. So these are the eyewitness reports on the floor, on the ground. Okay, so when you're in this, when it finally hits your town and you're in the middle of this, and you need to get from point A to B, but you can't move, and there's this chanting and singing. It's like being lost in a foreign country and you don't know the language, and you're being called to deal with an emergency, but you don't understand what they want because you don't understand their language. It's kind of like that. That's the feeling. And people were taking pictures, shooting videos, and streaming these onto WhatsApp and Facebook. And in the heat of the moment, people were saying things they wish they hadn't said, getting angry and upset because why this? Why now? We cannot afford this, right now. We have rights too. So who's looking after us? So I want to show you why am I doing this? A lot of people listening, I want to say, why this dramatic scene? Well, I, for one, have a lot of respect for those who left the comfort of a WhatsApp group or their couches and the comfort of their homes to be out there trying to fight, their absolute best to be fighting the good fight. And I kind of lost respect for those who sit and comment on the cries for help and support by blaming them for blowing things out of proportion. You see, the thing is that the truth needs to come out. And when we have these eyewitness reports and when we have these protests and we can be able to go and understand this whole thing and see it first offhand, suddenly and finally we can start seeing, okay, what will be the solutions? And we are in a stage now where I really do believe that change can happen, but we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. So suddenly and finally, through all of this, I understood why people go to social media with things that may not even be true or verified. But, they suddenly don't care what they say because they saw the same war zone and felt as helpless as I did for that moment. That few hours, that felt like a lifetime, and someone needs to be blamed for it. So you kind of get into that mode. And I wanted to carry that over to viewers and even our own community to understand that I know quite a little bit. I don't know much about fighting fires, but we were out there doing it. Ian is now on level 3 first aid, and he was out there as well, and he had his back ready. He was ready to go. We were out there to try and drive around. There was a lot of other community members helping, pushing rocks out the road, etc. But my question is why? Why do we have to suddenly do these things? But we kept going. People gathering in the streets, sweeping, cleaning, fighting fires, seeing to the elderly, checking on each other, filming, warning, communicating, sharing. I'm saying this in that order because that's the chaos that we were in. And you had to move fast, think fast, and try and move with this whole process and not be stoned in the process.
Can I tell you what I find? Can I tell you what I find quite disturbing is the copycat way that these riots take place. It's like you see the same sort of things with burning tires, rocks, burning buildings. It happens in let's say Port Elizabeth, and it happens in Victoria West, and it happens in Dalstrom. They're obviously following the same pattern.
Correct, and you'll also notice that when we went through the study, and we'll show you that on the video just now from the top view of how this progresses. You'll notice that the majority, there's almost like a body of a snake moving down a road. Right. And this body has a tail and it has a head. And I'll explain that to you now. But the POP arrived, eventually that's the public order police. They arrived and they very quickly and quite instantly diffused the situation. Now, diffused in the sense actually is not the right word. It's they went out there and they kind of grouped them in an area and they kind of maintained it. But then the fire started even being worse because there were guys breaking off from there, running into the fields, etc. So and I must be honest with you, and I think a lot of people would agree, I can't say, but I can say from my side, if the public order police did not arrive, I do really believe that we would have lost more and we would have more damages. That would definitely see this. So we need to fix this and we must fix it. And that's why we're having this discussion. So as we go along, I want to show you something. And as this video plays off, you have to bear in mind the strike happened just before a long weekend, because that's when they have the most audience and the most impact. Right. However, on this day, what was strange to me, there was nobody in town. There wasn't a lot of customers. Now, one, they closed the road at the top of town, which you can see here at the top. This is the bottom of town going to Leidenburg. We're moving back to the top of the town. Now, looking from this top view, it doesn't really look that disorderly. Now, this is quite a long stretch of road where they're walking, but I want you guys to start focusing on the sides of this. And remember, I was talking about almost like a snake moving down the main road, and it has a head and a tail. The head are the guys who's pushing the materials that they have to burn tires, the petrol, those kind of things, and they are the ones getting the group to move forward and continuously move forward. Then you have the middle, who's just people tagging along. If you look at them on close-up shots, you'll see they're just relaxed, they're walking. But look very carefully on the side of these videos. I'm going back there. I want you to kind of look at this area over here, where the red dot is highlighted, and look at how they are breaking off, and on the side of the road and everywhere else, where they're starting to vandalize road signs, throwing rocks into the road as they are moving. They are literally taking that whole street and just making it in such a way that you cannot move with vehicles. And what was disturbing to me during this time was the amount of roads that they closed down where you would typically have to move with emergency vehicles. When you move to point A and point B, you have to get some reroute because you can't move past the big rocks that they were carrying into the road. Okay, so with all that said, this being a long weekend and almost woman weekend, it's important to remember this long weekend story. The public order police and SANDF, eventually SANDF started arriving, and they stayed in the area for a while. And we kind of knew something bigger was up. This was not necessarily 3 points on a letter, okay?
Yeah.
And 2 days later, so this is now after the strike, 2 days later, and this is what happened the last time, and this was disturbing. There's a group of guys, between 8 and 10 guys, that were going from business to business. After the strike has happened, everything is cleared out, okay? They go from business to business. They start intimidating employees, and then they went back to work after the strike, by the way, and they started threatening the business owners and managers as that they must send their staff home until matters are resolved that specific building or business will burn. And these oaks had no fear. They were dropped off with a bakkie, very fancy bakkie. They went into the different businesses. They start threatening them and said, if you do not send your guys, your employees home, we're going to start burning your buildings. Okay, so I want to stop.
Do we know what?
Before we move on?
Before we do we know what political affiliation those 8 guys had?
No, that was at that stage where the police started taking over, because how that story ended eventually, a message immediately went out of this specific story and intimidation, and most of the town and farmers around us started arriving, and this created kind of some hot under the collar discussions in the town, and they started collecting at one specific restaurant, and they then decided, okay, enough is enough, and we need to find out who these guys were doing the intimidation, etc. And as the people were talking, there was a standing captain, because our captain was on leave, and our captain for SAPS, the standing captain, was to come and speak to the group. And one of the eyewitnesses, by the way, told me when I was interviewing them, he recalls, or she recalls, that the standing captain was afraid to come to the meeting out of fear of being shot. And so the guy kind of convinced him to say, but you're safe now, and we're all here, and you can come through. So that was a discussion she overheard. It's yet to be confirmed, but that was kind of where this went. And it is. If you look at most of your protest action videos that went viral on the internet, when police are outnumbered like that, they kind of just walk back. Okay. But in this case, this caught all of us off guard, including our own SAPS, who didn't really have enough people. If there were 2 police vehicles standing there, we had them on photographs. They were doing what they're supposed to be doing. However, they couldn't move with such a big a group of people. So they went to key places in town, and they were themselves, some of the investigators themselves were actually taking photographs as well to see who the guys are that they need to go and find. So, so that's what that's about. So the affiliation to a political party, we're not aware of. But what is very interesting is how this then eventually started transpiring when they went back to their own community. And I'll give you some details there. That might lead you into a bit of an answer.
Right.
So during this meeting, the SAPS found the vehicle and escorted them to the police station, where that investigation was done by SAPS, and I think it's still underway. But then this vehicle was then kept there for a while, and the troublemakers, I'm saying that in inverted commas, were then apprehended, and they were kept for a while. And I think that sparked another bit of a problem for us, because soon after we heard news that the councillor, when these guys went back, we heard that the ANC councillor and the EFF councillor, I think it was only the EFF councillor at that moment, that was physically assaulted and attacked as he left, Sakawe. And his vehicle was severely damaged. And then we started hearing about councillors being attacked as well, but their property being burned down to the ground. And so this started turning towards the politicians.
Right.
So eventually, you could very clearly see that 3 points on a list, and you're offering help on one of them, and you go into the process of negotiations, and suddenly on the 4th of August, they strike. And they go to the streets and they do this. Now, need I show you on this picture, for example, this is what we had to do. We had to kind of figure out, okay, so was this illegal or not? So this was not a protest. If you start picking up rocks and start burning places, it's considered a riot.
Yeah.
And it becomes illegal, and then the police can call this off at any time. But there's also a process, which we'll get into later, but there was a process that wasn't really followed. So we said, look, during this, the current lockdown situation, the laws that was passed for the emergency lockdown, the emergency legislation, public gatherings remain prohibited except for funerals, etc. And we kind of used this photo to indicate that there was much more than 50 people, but even that didn't even matter. The fact is, it's a public gathering. inside a lockdown where the rule states you're not allowed to do this. Okay.
Right.
So that's the only way that we were able to say, okay, cool. So at least we're getting to a point now, and the police were able to then start using the information. Very good. So I must say, from a community perspective, gathering information this quickly, it helped quite a lot, especially when you take photographs of the people who are doing the damages, which is on the sides. So I wasn't talking to you about that, the last part of this, which is the tail of the snake.
Right.
You'll see there's like small groups gathering at the end of this. Okay.
Yeah.
And I noticed very clearly that they were actually writing the names of the businesses whose doors were open, who were still open for business, and they were making phone calls and taking pictures. Because you have to understand that they're collecting information because the guys who did the intimidation went to specifically those businesses.
Right.
So this is organized and it's planned well in advance. It's not as if it just happens, sporadically. So going further into this long weekend, it was the Women's Weekend. The women started striking on that Women's Long Weekend. And they wished to actually march to SAPS buildings to hand over a complaint that gangs from Belfast, this was their perception, was that gangs from Belfast were assaulting their boys, and they were scared to sleep at night. And this march was immediately stopped because everybody heard the chanting and went rant about it. And then the public order police were immediately there, and they kept them in that area. So I went out there with the camera, I took a chance and said, listen, what are you upset about? And if you look at the photographs, the lady here in the blue is obviously the sister of the councillor who was assaulted and landed in hospital, apparently, as per her. And so I asked them a few questions. I said, listen, let me ask you, what is happening here? Because this is now a second strike. Okay, this is now something else. So what's happening here? And, some of them, they said they were upset because, one, their husbands do not work. Because the people in town are preventing a mine from opening in the area, and the councillors are believed to have received bribes to this regard, and so the councillors are perceived to be sellouts. And that was this lady in the wheelchair that was talking straight like that. Right. And then we had some said that they were angry because of racial slur in town, and then we had other people who said, another lady that said they want to have mines and jobs. Because there are no jobs in town currently. So now suddenly this thing takes a way other swing into a different direction. And suddenly we had 3 points, and then we had the issue of foreigners, and then we had the issue of this, and it starts becoming political. And so I want to stop here, and because I'm using this word, I used a word terrorist in the beginning. And so your splinter groups that kind of goes away from the snake and started, picking up stones, etc. If you go look where they fit into this whole process, you would clearly see that, and by definition, by the way, terrorist is somebody for political gain would go and use this kind of violence, burning and intimidation tactics to get their way politically. And that's why that word is so well used in this context, and people can get upset about it if you look at the definition of that. It's important that you know. So as the nights go on, suddenly farms around us started burning. There was one specific farm that's literally against town. That farm was burnt as well. And this building that you see in the middle in front of you, let me go back. That middle building in the middle there is what we called the green elephant. And it was kind of, everybody knew what the green elephant was. Those who didn't was quite new to town, and it became a good a discussion point. Right. But this was also some building that was gone through some political process, and it was standing there, not really being used. I think it was used for a glass crushing or something. But again, they burnt that building down, passing through it, etc. So apparently, and as per the interview went, and I'm yet to get some names and so on, but there was also some bad deal that went down here with the ANC, apparently. And this is why the people also went there. And torched it.
What we're talking about there with that building is the burning of that building was because of allegations of corruption involving the ANC, with a ANC cadre who actually was contracted to build that building and obviously made a huge amount of money.
So at the end of it, that's why when you look at what was burned as well, you can see where the anger went to, and why that can be. So there's a lot of things that still need to be confirmed, and that's the whole thing. Is this is such a long-winded process, and you really have to get through the process. So I'm going to almost end with this whole Dalstrom thing, but I want to say, what's happening now? Okay, so put short, the issues remain. Solutions cannot be provided by anyone right now. So, but we are thinking of an action plan, which we're getting to now. Most people here believe that the issues are fueled by role players outside of town, and our locals are being influenced by that. Could be the mines, could be the fact that the mine cannot open here. The fact that they are actually just desperate for an income. So there's a lot of things that's at play here. But the influences, you could see, it's new guys in town, and it was very clearly that since those guys started moving around town, that there were some issues happening here. So whatever the exact reasons are, I can tell you now that we will not be able to solve it as the normal people running businesses in this town, as it's, in my view, a national outcry of corrupt government and unemployment and lies that was finally exposed by this lockdown. And even if you go into this process and try and figure out and offer, an olive leaf and go out there and say, listen, guys, what are we going to do to solve this problem? And you offer that to them. It just didn't seem like they wanted that first help and that first solution, because the underlying issues were much bigger. And that's why over that whole weekend, POP was there. They were keeping the guys in there. I mean, you hear gunshots, and it could be rubber bullets, I'm not really sure. But then suddenly there's unmarked vehicles that arrive in town, and they exchange rifles with a taxi with a GP plate, for example. And you start realizing, okay, so these are now suspicious activity reports that comes to the community. And why did they exchange rifles with a taxi? That doesn't make sense. And then you find out, okay, no, it's the councillors that actually hired certain security companies from outside to come and look after their property while they are hiding or whatever. So the mayor, I'm not sure if he was here yet, but I don't think so. He was supposed to speak to them, and then they got upset because he never arrived. And so you can see how this thing is going to escalate anyways.
Yeah.
So
Now,
it's still a boiling pot.
Adriaan, when you talk about the council, that's an ANC-run council, isn't it?
Correct. Yes, correct.
Okay. So again, we come back to the issue of corruption.
Yeah, so that's in every single one of these. It eventually comes down to that. Promises being made, not delivered, and where's the money going? Because you're promising money, but we're not getting it, and we're not seeing change, etc. And if you look at the two forums, they were both supporting the progressive change and reforms, and they want to get that going. And these guys are young. They're not guys with a lot of experience in politics. And I say that with a lot of respect, because I think what they stand for, there's a lot of opportunity there for both, for the whole of Dalstrom, to kind of get things going with them, to show them that there's some communal issues here. But I was surprised at the way this was dealt with, and the way they came to the streets and started burning. And I want to show you this specific photograph, because here you can see a house on the bottom right-hand corner. Right. And we were in a car, we were looking at these guys, and it was two elderly people that's staying there. And the fires, if the main road is running up here, these fires started coming towards the Bloekombome. Now, these things take a light very quickly. And so I was concerned, and we started talking to them and said, listen, do you have neighbors? And no, they said no. And so you start going through this process in your head of, do we evacuate them? Do we fight the fires? And the farmers started arriving with their bakkie-sakkies. We call it bakkie-sakkies, but it's firefighter tanks that's on the back of like a double cab bakkie or so. And then they've got petrol motors that they spray on the fire, and they can manage the whole fire situation. So the thing is that you put so much energy and resources into fighting these fires, and this protest is still happening around you, and you're not really sure where to go and what to do. So I also believe that it will happen again, sooner or later. This time we wish to be better prepared. I mean, that's why we're going to throw out there and see what people say. We need to know what our rights are in terms of illegal protest. We know that now, and we're going to go through that process as well, and how to deal with it, when the authorities are not enough. So for now, and now I'm calming everybody a little bit down. For now, everything is back to normal. If you look at town, that is Dalstrom. That's how small it is. from this one shot, you can see we cannot afford these kinds of protests.
Yeah.
We need a way to kind of get to that synergy, which Ian will expand on a little bit later. And I wanted to also
just
say,
before you go on, who took this amazing drone footage? It's absolutely fantastic.
I don't, yeah, okay, well, look, when it was taken, the law for having a license was not yet passed, so it was myself. And
Okay.
I went through the process and just went through some of the footage I took in the past, and I started putting it together. And it's very important that people understand that when a protest action happens, and this is kind of what I want to say as well to our listeners out there, if I may, because I mean, this is the platform that people just understand, you know, that we are a very small village, and we're in the Mpumalanga Highlands. We're not far from the major city, so we're a good stay over or something for our locals, you know. And we're on the way to the Kruger National Park. We're halfway that way.
Right.
So it's quite a nice and quaint place for the people to quickly stay over and still be close to the major cities. That was, you know, I just want to say that.
Yeah.
And I also want to say is, you know, for as long as we can and have the means to do so, even after this and the plans we have, you know, businesses and families that's invested here, we will most certainly provide the same hospitality and service going forward, no matter the hardships that we face. We clean up the streets, we get going. We did warn a lot of our guests that were here. People were obliging to that because it's kind of a natural or a normal thing for South Africans to see nowadays. And that's a desensitizing part of it. But we want to ensure that business have been going on from there. There are people looking after the negotiations with these guys and seeing to, you know, what is exactly happening. Where they are in the process, I can tell you that the problem is not solved because unemployment will still be there. But I just wanted to reassure people that we will do everything in our power. And the same beautiful town that you see now on this shot is the same town that's there now. We're going in springtime. Everything's in full blossom, starting to blossom now. And we are ready to serve. The only thing is that we have a plan, and we're going to start working with every single person that we can to see how do we better go through this process.
I was just going to say, Adriaan, that your little town looks beautiful. It's how I remember South Africa. And when I see these videos of Johannesburg and Pretoria and the rubbish all over the place, it's really soul destroying to see that.
Absolutely. And that's the whole thing. You know, that's kind of the reason why we decided to stay in a short notice.
Right.
So I'm not going to take too much time up. I think I really want guys to listen and ask questions as well. But I think here's the thing is, you know, what does law say about protest action? And if the two forums have joined tonight, I want to ask you, go and, even if you call me, you know who I am, you know, get this toolkit and guide for organizing a protest, because it is everybody's right to protest, whether it is for service delivery, whether it's for farm attacks, whether it's for anything in this country of ours. There is a guideline for you for a reason. And this guideline, the biggest thing that I want to just take out from that is the exercise of the right to protest shall take place peacefully is the first keyword, and with a due regard to the rights of others. And this has been forgotten. And if you read this organizing a protest, you'll find out, and I'm saying this on live show tonight, that if you do not follow these guidelines and somebody picks up a stone or a rock or they set buildings alight, you will be criminally charged. And the people that have organized this whole event cannot run away from it anymore. You will be considered to be the organizer of that strike because your signatures are on that letter and you will be held accountable. So I want to tell you that we also have same issues. We also feel the same as you, but instead of going out there and being upset about it, allow us to get into dialogue in a way that we understand each other. Go and get this toolkit for yourselves. It's very easy. It's online. So I want to jump into this quite quickly because this is a very sore point, and it is where the future for South Africa and me as a 36-year-old guy, how I see it and where we are and how I've actually lived through this. You know, you've got so many SOEs that have already died, that is bankrupt, that is just bleeding it out there. Here's our problem, okay? We have a failing and ailing judicial system. In the lowest, you know, where the smaller towns are, with the smaller judicial system, some people are still managed very well. But I see this a lot going to courts in smaller towns. it feels to me like there's no timekeeping, there's no schedule. There's, mostly they start late with their proceedings. They don't tell you where you need to be. They don't, the witnesses are mixed with the accused, and it's all on the same benches, and everybody's sitting in the same room. And, here's the thing, okay? And this is how I feel about it, because I see and read the articles. Whether they're true or not, this is what I read and see. Our police are making arrests very quickly. Go and read about that. 6 people arrested, 7 people arrested. And they hope for the best, because when the blue line ends, it's as if this next part of it, the judicial system, is as if that's failing us, as well as the police that's really trying their utmost best to do their work, okay? So a case in point, for example, was Rob and I don't know, Scott, if you remember this situation, but this is just my case document that I'm keeping. This was Robert Lynn and Sue Howard from the Marshlands farm. Right. They were attacked in February the 19th, 2017. Now, I'm going to quickly scroll through. I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to show you. If you look at this document, this is my account, my notes, my everything, and look at the dates. Okay, yeah, of this, and the car being recovered, and the newspaper articles, and the fact that she died, and people wanted to see what she looked like, etc. And I can continue with this. Now, here's the last thing that I just want to read. The murder trial of 3 men accused of killing Brit expat Sue Howard has been postponed for an upteenth time, in spite of the fact that the court noted during previous sitting that no more delays will be tolerated. So there's the accused. I'm not going to read it, but the fact was they had no legal representation present, and that the trial could not continue. That was the last reason. And we can continue, postpone. Here's the last update that I put in this document with less details, because you can't. Oh, wow.
We're now 2020.
August. We're in 2020. The case has been postponed to the 21st of September. Now, may I just say that Mr. Rob has actually immigrated quite shortly after that situation, and he said he can't deal with this, and he flew back for this last case, and he had gone through all of those costs with his sister. I think it was his sister traveling with him, and this case just keeps getting postponed. And it's either the translator that they don't like, it's the suddenly the 3 accused. 2 of them are happy with the legal assistance, but the other one isn't, and and they just allow this to go on and drag on for how many? Since 2017. And this is what's concerning to me, because if your judicial system fails you, you're in more trouble than what a post office will fail.
We have so many examples of that.
Exactly. Here's another example in 2018, just to give you an idea, where the Shadow Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development said, statistics show that we are moving backwards, that we are finalizing fewer and fewer cases with convictions, and that the backlog of cases in all courts except the high courts continues to increase. So we are less and less effective. The court hours across all courts, from the lower courts to the high courts, are decreasing. Courts across the board start late, they adjourn early, and they postpone cases for long periods. This is causing the cost of litigation, both criminal and civil, to be beyond the reach of all but a few ordinary South Africans. And this was by Glynis Breitenbach. She was an MP, and I'm not sure what she's doing now, but this was from the DA that was saying this to the people. And this is what I want to tell you guys, is this is the concern. And it doesn't matter which process you take to go and get, whether it's farm attacks, whether it is protest action, whether it's this, they are so... I don't even know what the word is, but there's a mix of incompetence, or they're overloaded so much that they just cannot handle the pressure. And then we get into this discussion, and it's a sensitive one, but I'm going to say this. Right. This is us. I've realized a few months ago that this is us. We work hard. We try to get an economy going. We go back to our homes. We watch TV and we fall asleep, and we just carry on like this every single day. We kind of lost a few things, but I want to say to you this: community comfort. There's the doers, the thinkers, the blamers, the haters, and the gatekeepers. And I'm going into our action plan, and I'm kind of telling this to all other communities that's going to go through the same, or who is currently going through the same. You've got your doers in your town. Those are the people who simply get stuff done. I'm talking about municipal issues, leaking taps, those kind of things that's not going to get fixed right now, because everybody's upset, right? Now, those guys are mostly not liked by most other people in town. But they have they have the tendency to quickly withdraw and be discouraged when they actually want to try and make change. These guys need to be accepted. You have to go and look at who's the doers in your town who can get something done, okay, and work with them. Then you get the thinkers. They've got well-planned ideas. They are amazing at the plans they do and the legal aspect behind it and so on, but they're all so late. So new ideas and things don't get implemented because they're afraid of them. They want to stay in their own comfort zones, okay? Then you get the blamers. Those are the guys who move right on to pointing fingers, naming and shaming those who dared to bring change and failed. I mean, you're going to fail. If I don't know how to fix a water pipe because I've been coding my whole life, I can figure it out, but I'm going to fail. But eventually I'll become a superhero with that. But then I'll move on to the next thing. Right. And I need not to be blamed for it, okay?
Yeah.
The reason why I'm bringing that up is because one of the things that when the community starts standing together and you go out there to fix something, you've got the authorities coming to you, threatening you, they're going to lock you up because you are vandalizing municipal property. And this is a case in point that we've got a lot of support for, is, for example, a leaking pipe that's been leaking 600 liters of water every hour. And then all of the leaks in the town is approximately 2,000 liters per hour, I think per day or something that we're losing right now. And we don't have a lot of water in this town. Okay, we're a very small fishing town, by the way.
Right.
And then you get the haters, making sure that everybody else also hates you. And that's how bad you are. And then they turn their back on you when you most need their skills, because every single person I'm naming here are important in this process. We just need to find a way to work together. And then you get the gatekeepers. This is something that's really sensitive to me, but it has its place. But I want to read this because this will make more sense to everyone out there. And I'm talking specifically about a CPF. So in a CPF meeting, a woman stood up from the community where I came from. A woman who really do a lot for her community, and after her husband was shot and killed in a hijacking outside the home, I mean, she made a concerted effort to be on the front lines to fight the good fight and obviously be eyewitness and do a lot of reporting and driving around, etc., and helping her community with victim support. That was her goal.
Right.
So she did this very passionately, okay, and she provided suggestions to the CPF that she was in. But tonight, she had enough of the chairman, and she looked at him and she said, "You are not a chairman, you're actually a gatekeeper, the bad kind. So just so you know, gatekeeping doesn't make you a god. It just makes you, and I'm sorry for this, an asshole." Okay.
Right.
And we get this because I found, speaking to about 8 different people that were ex-CPF, etc., and they said a CPF can be very good, but it can be horrendous. Because what happens is, if you've got a gatekeeper on the bad side, they will protect the authorities. They will defend them. They will also tell them how they must do their work. The other side gets lazy. The community gets upset because they perceive that nothing gets done. And there's always going to be this fight. So you've got this middleman standing there, and it's preventing things from happening. So that needs to be fixed. So we are in that stage. So gatekeeping in any form, not the CPFs only, but in any form, gatekeeping is in its bad state like a cancer. So it discourages people like that lady and myself. My dad was shot in his house and he died because of and I made a commitment next to his bed before I got married that I will dedicate my life with using my technical skills and ability and analysis skills to try and fight crime.
Right.
And the thing is, it discourages people like me who are passionate about something from learning and assisting and helping the police and everyone else. I'm not only talking about them, I'm talking about any authority out there. They should allow us to be able to do that. So it's unhealthy and it's truly harmful to our society. And this guy lying on the couch, if you look at this tonight, I want you to ask yourself, if you've got some security plan, some prevention plan that you need to implement for your family because you want to prevent a farm attack, or you want to prevent home invasions or protest action from really damaging your property, you better get up off that couch and start making that work, because nobody is going to stand guard at your door tonight. The government is not going to do it. The police is not going to do it. The SANDF is not going to do it. You are the man of the house. Get up, implement your security plans, put in early warning systems, make time for it. And I want to ask the woman as well, and I'm just talking about married life because I've been married for a long time now. So I just want to say, support your husband in his cause, supporting in his security process. Get the kids in that discipline as well. Get that going in your house. Don't throw keys everywhere, etc. We can name a few things, but I just wanted to say that if this is you, look at yourself, get off the couch and start doing something, whether it's for your community or for yourself, but start in your own house first.
Right.
Then you go to your neighbor and get to know your neighbor and get him to do the same. So I'm going to go to Ian now. Ian, you still around? You still listening to me?
Yep, still here.
Before you do, Ian, just give me a couple of minutes here. Adriaan, I've got a couple of questions that have come in the side chat I'd like to just present to you, because they're related to your presentation. And Viking says, thank you for all the information on the screen. This is very well planned and presented. And I must commend you, Adriaan. I think what you've put to us is very easy to understand and very well presented. Now, Andries van der Heever's asked a question for the current speaker. That's Adriaan. Where are your statistics coming from? And also, who appointed you to be the spokesperson for the village? Now, I don't think we ever suggested you're the spokesperson for the village, but you're a concerned community member.
Yes. Yeah, so that's the simple answer. I think somebody needs to get up and talk. And as I said prior to this as well, I don't speak on behalf of a town. I speak on behalf of my willingness to help.
Right.
I can only say what I see, and I've gone into the different places where the people were upset. I went there with my big lens camera and went right into the middle of these things and started taking pictures, which I've got a lot of evidence for.
Right.
I've gone and seen people personally for interviews, specifically sensitive information that I spoke to. And the reason I'm doing it is because I've got a passion and a love for my country, and I'm going to answer him very, very importantly, this next thing. I'm at a stage where this will be my last attempt in my life to do something loyal and patriotic for my own country. And if things cannot change, and if people, even him, I think he's got skills that we can use. Don't start to look at this and say, we are gathering statistics as a community. We confirm that, and we're going to help you. Where can we help you? Because we need hands, we need support, we need funding, we need a lot of things, okay? Wherever you can help, do that. So what I'm doing tonight, right here, right now, is because of my own commitment to my father, the promise I made, and the love I've got for crime fighting, okay? So yeah, the interviews, the statistics come from asking questions. Some of the statistics come from, I've got a lot of resources, by the way. I'll put it for you later on, maybe to put in the description, Scott.
Right.
But I've got a list of all my sources, where all of the information comes from. Some of them will always stay anonymous. We can't talk about that. But if he's around in our area, he's welcome to have a coffee with me. We can go through the statistics.
Right. Okay. And look, I just want to say that I really commend what you're doing, and I believe that in a short while you're going to be putting forward a solution that you've created to help people monitor crime where things are bad are happening and stuff like that, so you can find out where the clusters are. A really sophisticated system that you're willing to share with little towns all over South Africa at no cost. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right. But before we get there, I just want to say also that, putting this whole thing together, I've had an absolutely tremendous amount of support from community members in our town.
Right.
People who are also, just as confused about what happened, and just as eager to see change happening. And we're at a stage where if I didn't have that kind of motivation and support from my wife, my people that surround me, Ian, for example, is a very good example of that. He's going to talk to you now, and you'll hear the knowledge that comes from him. And the thing is that this was an entire team effort, and we tried to do it with the people who are willing and able to do this. So yes, coming back to the system, that system that we are going to show you, last, and offer that to other communities, and even if places like AfriForum or those kind of places want to look into it as well for community policing. This system was literally designed and developed here in Dalstrom based on specific issues that we were facing in our community, both municipal and crime-wise. And so over a long period of time, I think it was 2 years, it kind of matured into where we kept it up to date with incidents that was reported by both police and community. And out of that, we started pulling, anomalies and statistics and hotspots areas and so on. So we'll
right.
There's a bit of a short example of that.
Well, I just have to say I commend you, because I've had a quick look through it with you, and I think it's absolutely amazing. And any town, and you're involved in the community policing there, aren't you, at Dalstrom?
So not the forum as such a lot. I think there's still some change coming, and they're really busy working on that. But in the policing, yes, if I have to go patrol, I do. I'm not a firm believer in that, but
Right.
I do the information side, and I try my best to get our block up and running and get people off the couches and just helping them understand that we are not living in 1950s anymore. We're living in a time where you cannot sit and blind your eyes to, or focus on only what you're doing, because we're living in a stage where it's actually, very vulnerable. We are all vulnerable at this stage, and you have to open your eyes to that, accept it, go through that denial process and accept there's a problem, and here's how I'm going to protect my family first, because it's like the same principle on an airplane. That attendant will tell you, you first put on your own oxygen mask before you start helping somebody else. And that's the same principle here. Sort out your own house, get your own things going, and then you start helping your neighbors. And that's how that butterfly effect. So that's kind of the principle and the action plan that we have in place now. You and I shortly spoke about it a while ago, about the smart city idea. And the concept there was to break up town in such small areas and then start working with your own group of people. So that's where we were.
Okay. Now, I have to say, just before we move to Ian, I was very impressed with the way that you guys rallied around and cleaned up the village or the town after this all happened. There's one final question I've got for you, Adriaan, that I want to just put to you. Jackie van Eerden asks, please explain why we keep on with diplomacy, but the rest is destroying our country. It is like going to a gunfight with a marshmallow, isn't it?
That's exactly how I feel. Sorry for laughing, but I think she just said what so many people feel like. And I think we need to get into a stage where all of us understand freedom of speech currently is still in power. And we have to say that, because I want to tell every single person that's listening here today, and when you hear this and it means something, I'm glad, but then share it. You all must start talking about this. We are not getting trauma counseling. And I'm telling you, you think you're strong, but these things play so badly on our mindsets and our hearts, and we get upset. It builds up, and then it eventually comes out the wrong way. And our problem right now, and I'm saying this because I love South Africa and its people. I've been brought up as a Rainbow Nation child, and I have this firm belief that there is this whole communal thing going. But this rainbow's colors were removed by politicians, and they've put black and white in there. And currently, that is the fight that's being fought. The angers are being directed to each other and not to the right way or channels or means to go through this process. Right. So go and listen to me now. Just talk about it. Say what you want to say. Tell us that it is a marshmallow that you're trying to fight with, because at least then we can kind of arm you, and I'm saying this in inverted commas, arm you with the right information if we start working together and say, look, I can tell you this much. The moment you start looking at statistics and data and what it tells you, and you get actionable intelligence from that, the fight is not in the street. The fight is in the silence. I promise you, you win much better that way, in the silence, and using that information and following the right channels to do that. But that's why I brought up the judicial system, because you're going to need a legal person on your side who's willing to go through that headaches and process to push this through and finally get small wins. That's what we are after.
Now, there's one final comment, and then I'm going over to Ian. And Rita Rustov has said, please tell Adriaan, I know his dad and all his loved ones. We are all very proud of you.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that. That means a lot for me. That does mean a lot to me.
Okay. All right, Ian, over to you, buddy.
Okay, so Ian, I'm going to question you.
Oh, good.
So I want to tell people, I've gone through quite a lot of things, and Scott, you need to know why a lot of people will be asking in our community as well, who gave you the right, etc. Let me tell you something. I'm so passionate about things and about crime fighting that sometimes I get lost in translation. or people lose me in that passion, and they kind of, I start talking in spaghetti code, if I can use that word. And the reason why Ian is here is because he doesn't know this yet. He's going to hear it now, but he's one of the guys who literally got me to sit behind a computer and change the way I present and change the way I do things in such a structured way for people to understand me rather than running away with it, because I get so passionate that I actually get upset and then people shut the doors to me. And he said to me, his words were, "You never attend those meetings. You send the old guys to do that. You sit at home because you're very good at the technical stuff." And I want to thank him because as a friend, he had such a good impact on my life, positive impact. And that's why I will continue going on like this. Okay.
Fantastic.
So, over to you. Here's the thing. A lot of people, Scott, in your text, in your sideline chat with live shows, there's a lot of people that say, "Hey, guys, stop talking and do more action." And these photos that I'm showing you now are community members from our block and from various other places. You see the bike here, that was found by community members when the bike thefts were on very high.
Right.
Here, Ian is helping me understand, a lot of things about about bandaging people, etc. And so there's a lot of things that's happening in the background that's changing the way we see ourselves and the way forward. Leaking a pipe under a road, for example, being fixed by community members.
Right.
The thing is just get up and do it. That was the whole idea. Now, without further ado, I'm going to just go onto his slide and just introduce this. We do believe that there's more tough times ahead, and there's a lot of real lessons to learn from COVID. And so I want us to stop and think that this COVID-19 and the lockdown is really the tip of the iceberg, but there's other pressing matters that now came second, and that's going to come to the fore now. And what the protest was one of them. But there's a lot of things in our country, and this is what I want Ian to kind of get into. And I want to lead him into this by saying, Ian, our economy is bleeding on the floor. That's where we are. Okay, so I need you to make people understand what does that mean.
and I just need to quickly butt in for a second and just say that, look,
Sure.
Our live streams normally go for a couple of hours or even more. So, take your time. Don't feel like there's a time constraint. Ian, off to you.
Okay. Yeah, Scott, actually, Adriaan and I were chatting about this, and some of the things that Adriaan raised is like, how do we know when it's really gone too far? At what point are we as South Africa in terms of how bad is it? How bad is it going to get? And so forth. I think a lot of people have these kinds of discussions. And I said, Adriaan, I kind of see it like this, is let's suppose I have a patient that's bleeding out on the floor. They're losing a lot of blood. The body has compensatory measures. It's called compensatory shock. So you'll find the heart beats faster and the breathing rate increases, whatever. And the body's really doing what it can to normalize itself. So that would be compensatory shock. And we have a lot of compensatory mechanisms within society, within our economy, and so forth. And so things like negotiations is compensatory shock. We're trying to rectify things. Getting SAPs involved or POP involved or what have you, we're able to rectify the situation. What worries me is, to extend that analogy, is when we go into what's known as decompensatory shock, and that is that the heart is basically just out of energy. There is not enough blood, and we can liken blood to corruption, where it's money leaking out the system, or tenders that shouldn't have been awarded in the first place.
Right.
And so what then tends to happen, of course, is that the body can no longer compensate. It's decompensating. And in medical terms, that's when it gets really, really difficult. That's when you need advanced life support. A medic or a paramedic can still deal with compensatory shock. As soon as it degrades to decompensatory shock, then you've got real problems on your hands. And so we thought, okay, well, let's play with this analogy, because then what we need to do is to look at what is compensation in the situation that we find ourselves in. What are we doing to compensate to actually kind of stabilize the situation and sort of build community health again? And the reason we played with that abstraction a little bit is because by using an abstraction, we can kind of clarify our thinking. We're not necessarily bogged down with details. And to our mind, it's the compensatory things that we need to really to put a lot of effort into, building a good SAPS community relationship, making sure that there are work contracts in place, that we understand the political landscape and this, that, and the other. And I'm not going to expand on those in a lot of detail, but we need to look at what the compensatory measures are. Then, on the other hand, what if you we end up in a decompensatory situation? You need to be able to handle that too. You know, a paramedic not only knows how to handle compensation, but they also know what to do in terms of decompensation. And so this is kind of where we really would like to expand some of the way that we're thinking, is to look at those mechanisms,
Right.
The compensation mechanisms, and then look at the decompensation mechanisms. What can we do when it really, really goes wrong? I think what tends to happen is people put things into two camps. You know, you're a prepper, you're just waiting for the apocalypse. And really, I'm not. We're really not. You know, we would really like to have you know, a nice, peaceful little sort of village that people enjoy coming to and enjoy living in. Not looking for trouble. Would like everything to work properly. But at the same time, you can't live in a delusion that your patient, in that case, the health of the community, isn't ever going to go into decompensatory shock. It certainly can, and you need to be able to cope with that. You need to be able to handle it. So this is some of where our strategy is, our strategic thinking is headed. Yeah, I think I'm going to hand back to Adriaan quickly, because you may want to just explain some of these images now with the six packs. So guys, also, you know, don't believe that it can't ever happen, because it can. It can go horribly wrong, and we don't want it to go horribly wrong. And we had some amazing people that came out. You know, Adriaan mentioned the cleanup of the town earlier, yeah. And there are a lot of people. We saw a lot of people that were cleaning up the town, and they will probably never get mentioned. Clearing rocks out the road and the rubble and burnt tires and so forth. And then also word to the people that always stand kind of on the sides. And, you know, Adriaan mentioned them earlier. They have a lot to say. And it's funny how very often we don't see those people when you're worrying about, you know, geez, you know, is this crowd going to turn violent? Are these guys going to turn up this road rather than down the road? When you're actually there.
Yeah. And
it's very easy to criticize. It's very easy to point fingers when you're not actually there, what you could, should, and would have done. It's quite a different thing when you are actually in that situation. Moving back to where we were with SAPS as well. I mean, as community volunteers, we sometimes have a bit of an abrasive relationship with SAPS. But I must admit, they were, for me at least, they let me through the roadblocks. They let me carry on doing what I was doing. I'm not sure everyone had that same experience. We have some good experiences with SAPS, and we have some bad experiences with SAPS. So, you know, there are times where we try and phone them and we just simply cannot get through to the station. And there are other times where they're very, very helpful. So we'd like to see more of the helpful, of course. But, you know, I think we need to kind of look at things in a realistic situation, and to look at things on balance. You know, we tend to have gone into a very like an era of binary politics. You're either right wing or you're very left wing.
Right.
There's nothing in the middle, basically. You know, so we went into like an era of binary politics, which is just ridiculous. And so we need to look at things on balance. We can't say, you know, oh, SAPs are bad. You know, well, they're not. I mean, then they really did save our bacon. And then another point I think that needs to be brought up is to be very careful of the language that we use. You know, we need to paint the situation accurately. On the one hand, yeah, you could liken this to a war zone. I think we rank 8th now as the most violent country in the world. Having said that, I have a nephew, rather, in the UK. He's been stabbed 3 times. He lives in Leeds. He's suffered more violence than I have in the UK, which you kind of assume is a relatively peaceful country.
I guess it's what you get up to as well.
Yeah, that is also true. But he's not a bad lad. He's a good lad, and he's just not living in the best part of town in the UK. But there are a lot of times that I think there are other countries that tend to cover up a lot of their problems, and they tend to be more exposed here in South Africa. So it's not all green grass on the other side either. We most of the time Dalstrom is very peaceful and it's a beautiful place to live, and a lot of times South Africa is a very beautiful place to live. So I think we need to be very careful of the language that we use and to try and paint it accurately, and that allows us to deal with it. You can't have a situation where you just got your head in the sand. That's just ridiculous. You can't have a situation where it's like a war zone, like Afghanistan, because it's not like that most of the time. So we need to be, I think, try and look at it as accurately as we possibly can. And then I think Adriaan's going to just sort of expand upon some of these images that we're seeing here.
But before he does, I've got a question for you, Ian. Andries van der Heever has asked, Ian, where did you get your qualifications?
Which ones? If they're medical, it's Swift Ambulance. If it's EMT, it's a university in the States. It's Denver Health Paramedic Division.
Right. Okay.
And then just to answer that question, I'm on a roughly now 380 academic hours of medical studies.
Right. Okay. Now, are we over to Adriaan now, or?
Yeah,
I think.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, Adriaan, over to you.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Ian. I think, when we look at this picture, I said to him, we mustn't have this too long on the screen because I'm still jogging, I'm getting there. But, getting off the couch action plan really entails you to really get involved. Get involved not only in your town, get to know your neighbor. That's the first step, okay? So get involved with your neighbor, speak to them, see where they are. If you hate your neighbor, there's lots of people that come to me and say, well, I can't stand them. The thing is that they're the closest to you, they're the closest people who's going to come in there and help you. They are literally next to you. So they will be able to, from a safe distance, see what's happening around your house from both sides. Simple things, okay? That's back to basics. But the get involved part of this action plan is where when Ian was referring to this for somebody with hemorrhage or extreme bleeding, when they bleed out, there's this compensation that kicks in and decomp, etc. Right. Now, getting involved is part of that plan to get you back up and running, the town, the community, or whatever you're busy with. And so getting involved in our case will be to get involved with the two forums that was there on the right foot, in the sense that, look, they get a lot of frustrated members, but get involved with them, get to the meetings. A lot of the times I'm thinking, they've circulated the letter, they've asked for people to be at a meeting on the 3rd of August. Yes, some people don't have the time for that, it's during business hours, but then get involved in the sense of invite them then, or that forum group, the 8 people, to go to a formal sitting with the townspeople and discuss the matter, get involved, listen. Even if you don't want input or negotiate, it's not a problem. Just listen to what it is, because you will find that most of the issues that we're experiencing with regards to service delivery, the government, we share a lot of things that we are upset about, but there's no midway communication. And so both sides need feedback, and then both sides get upset because we kind of let people in the middle do this, and that's not it. I'm a concerned citizen. I just do these things because I think I can look from the outside and say, okay, but guys, we have to go there. And that's why I had the coffee session with a guy to see, what really is the problem. So get involved with that. The reason is, we need to reason to get something going. We need to negotiate. We need to talk. We need to
get on the same page.
Where we have synergy between all the different groups anyways, because there's so many different views and so on. But just determine the points that really make sense. I don't have to believe in their culture. I don't need to do anything else. I know that we are at a stage where we just need to find synergy in the fact that we've got an ailing South Africa, we've got a failing South Africa. And so what all of the anger is about, in order to protect yourself, there's two phases to this. If every single chat failed, if every single other option that you have with the other guys fail, then we get into a process where, okay, well, fine, then the line is drawn in the sand. And so we're going to get to the lessons learned kind of part of this. But the idea is that, just reason and try and figure out what is happening. Spend time, make time to try and figure out what's really going on. And don't wait for other forums or other people to go and ask what is happening. Go and find out for yourself. Start questioning. Don't just go with the flow. Accept that there's other things that you may not know, and then go and find it out and ask the questions. You don't need to have answers for it, but then at least you can make your own. You have your own answers, and you don't have to wait for a forum or a group to give you that feedback, because that is a very big thing. That you wait for minutes for a meeting, but why weren't you at the meeting, kind of thing,
right?
And I'm saying that tongue in cheek, because I'm also at a point where meetings, but at the same time, if you get in there, get out there, you'll be amazed at what you actually learn around you and how much you actually don't know about your own house and your own security and things like that. And then initiate action. Get like-minded people. Either do it yourself, start doing it yourself. I know, for example, when we were fixing one of the leaking, I'm back on that subject, sorry about that, but we were fixing that. And there were actually two guys walking up the street, and that's where I met Sean and Mark in our area. And I was amazed to get to know them and see, we were in that cold water, we were like draining this thing, and we were talking and chatting. And suddenly there's a friendship that forms, and suddenly the problem is solved. And then suddenly everybody says, okay, well, the water works. Okay, so within 2-3 hours, everything's sorted. And even though it's temporary fixes, I mean, those temporary fixes have never leaked again since, and it's been almost over a year now. So that's the idea. And then give feedback. If people want to know from you, listen, why are you retrenching? Try and make contact, give feedback, be honest, because we all hurt and we all gone through this damn lockdown, and people have closed down and lost their businesses, and phone them and say, listen, this is the reason, but I'm not going to give you details, but we cannot afford this anymore. Here's the very good interesting thing, and I'm saying this because we tried that. We tried the 3 avenues that was presented to the tourism industry to get funding from the government for relief, okay, for the businesses. The process you have to go through is quite cumbersome, and I understand why. But on the other side as well, when they had those rules about, it was mostly focused on black owners, etc. Again, that rainbow black and white comes into play, and suddenly you get discouraged and you just stop the process and you go quite on. And that's the marshmallow story that I can hook onto as well, which I fully understand, because you just give up and you walk on. But I mean, places like the Business Forum is, if I look at their process, let's say 100% black-owned business, and they can actually help town businesses to help the employees keep their jobs by helping us through that process and stand together to do that. It's a difficult thing to get going. I know it's a lot of things to say, but that's the simplicity behind the solution. But getting it implemented, now you are dealing with a corrupt government, and then everybody gets discouraged again. So a lot of there's some chats that I've read quickly while Ian was speaking, and I see it, everybody feels the same way. It doesn't help to go to the courts. It doesn't help to go to government. It's 90%, in my opinion, the answer. It doesn't help to, etc. And it's a horrible feeling. It's a helpless feeling, and we know what it is. And that's why we're having this discussion, to open it up to say, what ideas are there that we help each other, rather than we walk away from this whole process and we just start helping ourselves become more self-sufficient, those kind of things. Okay, so I'm going to quickly move on. The reason why, by the way, I'm putting this picture up there is that this guy, when he took that picture, somewhere in the world, he's probably going to phone me and say, I need to take this picture down of him, because I just Googled a picture of a strenuous exercise. The point I'm trying to make here is, this guy took that shot. He knew what he was aiming for, but the hard work that went into getting that body versus the one that he had, it wasn't just sitting on the couch waiting for it to happen, or waiting for feedback from someone, or minutes, or an agenda, or a meeting. It was actually doing it himself. And that's the key here, is we need to get back into that. We call it a warrior mindset.
Right.
here I just want to again just ask Ian to expand on this. When there was all this talk about action plans, and this was before the protest, and how are we going to change our town to become more secure? I mean, we had a spate of break-ins suddenly, and TVs were stolen everywhere. And before that was all the bikes, and before that, so you get into a stage where you start gathering this information, and how do you use it? So I'm going to hand over to Ian again, just to give us an idea, a quick overview of why we chose these 4 subjects. Why Air Scouts, and why choose these kind of concepts?
Yeah, thanks, Adriaan. Yeah, we started Air Scouts. It was sort of principally like a little air rifle club, but we wanted it to be a whole lot more than that. And we started looking at some of the skills that the community needs to be more self-sufficient. So we've been doing things like first aid medical training, how to use bandages, getting your first aid kits sorted out, that kind of thing. We're going to be looking at more bushcraft skills, what sort of wild foods you can, buscraft, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, buscrafting. We're going to start doing that here in town.
And so we notice that there's a lot of skills that are being lost, self-sufficiency skills are being lost in the community, and that includes security skills. Now, we kind of open ourselves up here because, yes, you're teaching people how to shoot and this, that, and the other, and yes, we are. We're developing those skills. But what you need to understand is it's also about when not to use lethal force, and how to diffuse situations. That is probably more important than escalating situations. And so we haven't really been able to advertise it. We're really just piloting it at the moment and trying to get it working properly. And it's been going pretty well, actually, getting people involved. And so, for instance, if you called out to a medical emergency, you have the actual first aid skills. If you are going off patrol, you have a first aid kit with you, and you have all the emergency numbers and know all the protocols, etc. So, yeah, we've been playing with this idea called Air Scouts. It's open to anybody. We start with a lecture. Usually, we'll have for instance, we covered 15 applications of a triangular bandage, and that was one of the first things we did. And it's open to anybody that's interested. You can then stay if you wish. You can stay and shoot air rifle and shoot whatever it is you want to do, or you can go home after that. This is really one of the initiatives that we have of getting some of the community skills back. So we'll have things like how to light fires, how to navigate, and we also, going back to the 6-pack previously, Adriaan had up there. Yeah, we do. We put our go bags on and we go for a run. How far can you run with your emergency bag? Because you may need to actually do that. In my case, being a first aider, I've got to carry a fair amount of first aid equipment, and I may need to run with that. So I've got to be probably fitter than the average person.
Right.
I need to carry somebody or so forth. So this is the one where we can we kind of open ourselves up a little bit, but I think it's quite important to redevelop those skills.
Right. Now, Ian, how do people get involved, or how do they get information about Air Scouts? What's the email address, or is there a website?
Yeah, so
I think yeah.
So I think we'll put in the description our normal forum email address for you, Scott. I think I'm actually going to put it on the chat as well.
Yeah, put it on the chat.
The email address that I'm putting in the chat there is where people can inquire about it, because the idea is also, to get young kids a little bit more engaged in, the kind of bush life and how it works, and just get that kind of discipline back. So that's why I loved the concept that he brought up as bringing it into town. And also being able to kind of get people from outside to come back in there, and come and experience this for themselves. So
right.
that was the concept behind that. So
just to
part of that.
Just to go through the 4 points, it's medical,
sure,
bushcraft, not buscraft, self-sufficiency, and security.
Yes, correct.
Okay, right. And your email is info@dssf.online.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, so people who are interested in getting involved in Air Scouts, they can just send an email there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, correct.
Scott,
Fantastic.
just like I say, with the COVID lockdown, we were told that we can't just openly advertise it. And so what we did is, okay, we're going to continue with it anyway, but then we'll pilot it and we'll see what works and what doesn't work. And then once we've freed up enough and we've got some of those ideas working properly, then we'll really open it up.
Fantastic.
So it is exploratory, kind of a new idea that we've got.
Yeah. I have to tell you that live streams are a fantastic way to network. I've seen so many live streams that we've had where, this person has found the other person, there's an incredible synergy, and then they're able to really get going on some project. So,
For sure. And that's why platforms like yours is so amazing to be on. And talking about that, Scott, I mean, here's some of the things that we put down based on some of the videos that we watched that was quite leading us into the plan that we're having. And I don't know I think I mentioned to your name, I'll get to his name later, but that guy, if we can get him on your show as well, it will be amazing. He's written a book, and I think you will find him very, very knowledgeable, and he's a well-respected man, ex-military guy, veteran. And if we can get into a point, I think I sent it in the mail, I'll find it. But the idea is that people out there on your show just listen to this man's calm way of speaking about the issues in South Africa and how he answers that. And there's one question, by the way, that I want to ask Ian, and I didn't. And I want this to go out on a live stream, and it's about this slide. I saw a lot of people asking and saying on your show, Scott, and this is one of the lessons I've learned, was getting ex-veterans involved in specific community projects. And we're very interested in that because as an IT guy, I'm technically, I can do things for you and get things done and help you get, technology going. But I don't have the necessary skills. And even though I don't feel bad about it because I'm learning as I'm going, there are ex-veterans that have training in order to, for the security part of your town, where they can say, how do you secure a neighborhood, etc. But I do found that a lot of veterans have the thing that they feel betrayed by the government, they feel they've served their time, etc. And I want to ask Ian, what would be your response to someone who says, look, I've served my time, I'm not interested, I've done my part. Going forward, should this go downhill? What would your answer be?
My answer to that is a person that's going to perpetrate the crime doesn't care one bit what you did, whether you did national service or whether you didn't do national service, or whether you skimped it, whether you were a superhero in Angola. They don't care. If they want what they want, they're coming for it. And I think there's maybe a little bit of a mindset that's almost like you've served your prison sentence, that I've done my time, I've served my duty to my community, and that's it. I don't see it that way. It's a case of maintaining those skills, or as people have aged, is at least being able to impart the knowledge to allow other people to be able to secure their property, secure their loved ones, and so forth. Anyone that's coming for you, they don't care what you did in the Army or Air Force or Navy or anything. I think there's a certain kind of mindset that comes in with military service. I mean, they actually sent me home from Nasrec on a medical condition, but I was a naval cadet. And you do have a very, very strong sense of camaraderie and teamwork and doing stuff that is just absolutely, it's actually amazing, some of the things that you do. I absolutely like all of the time in naval cadets, but it was very difficult. And if you think cadets is just very easy, try it. Really try it. It's a hell of a workout, okay? You really test to your absolute limits. And so, yes, you do develop a little bit of a different mindset. But you can't just let that go, because that was then, this is now.
Absolutely. And I think that was the key as well for a lot of people to hear this, because I want to say this out there, that we need, as the younger generation, I think we also need that discipline and that knowledge transfer, because we don't really mix with that. We don't really talk about that. And we're sitting in a stage, in a time of life where we Google things, self-sufficiency, security, prevention, crime prevention plans, but it comes from afar. It comes from over the sea, over the sea. That's such a weird thing to say, but it is from America, for example. You get your preppers box and your grab bags and all of those things. But as we've learned in this COVID, it doesn't necessarily work that way. And what we are experiencing is a very slow and torturous situation. And so it's legally done as well. So we have to understand that, yes, those things are very good, but it has to be in context. And how do you take a small community like Dalstrom, Clarence? I think they've got a lot of plans of their own, which have proven to work for them. But the idea is then to go and have like a round table with ex-veterans and so on. And why I'm saying that is because they had the training of not only warfare, but discipline in security, looking after your things, having a discipline to arrive on time, be on time, so I just wanted to ask that question because a lot of people out there need to understand that we need you. I need more knowledge about that. And I think people who want to, the same email address, Scott, they can use to tell us, okay, so
right,
here's some suggestions or pointers to home security for yourself, but here's, for example, a community approach that you can take. Because like I said, authorities are quite inundated with processes and things of their own. And whilst you are sorting out your CPF or other forums, there's that still has to get going, and you have to have like-minded people. But we need people that has gone through this before and that can tell you where the pitfalls were and how you can work around it.
Now,
so
Adriaan,
that was one of the things. Yes.
Adriaan, have you heard of Boereligion?
Yeah, we've heard of them. We've heard about Zuidlanders. I've done a lot of research as well in my past and been able to go to some of the camps with Zuidlanders as well. And I think they're all fighting a damn good fight. But yeah, I've heard of them, and I think we can.
I'll tell you why Boereligion is standing out for me, and I'll just tell you what their basic operandi is, and they certainly fill or tick a lot of the dots that you've got here on that screen. And most important of all is that they have groups in most small towns. Now, where they differ from Zuidlanders are looking at taking everybody out of a dangerous situation and putting them somewhere in the country, which is certainly a viable option. At least it's a plan B. But Boereligion have a totally different plan, and that is that their members within that little town will protect that town in times of trouble, and they will stay there. And I think that when I look at that thing we're going to get to shortly, which is that concept you've developed for Dollstrom, I think there's a very, very good match here with that organization and what you're doing here.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I think what we'll do, I'll go through some of your videos, but also I know I've got some details here, and we'll definitely try and see what we can find out from them as well.
Well, what I'll do,
any help really helps.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll ask Marlena. Marlena, I see she's in the side chat and watching. Marlena, if you could perhaps contact General Isaac van Zyl and see if we can put Isaac directly in touch with Adriaan, and let's see if this could be another extension for all those little towns, using that product that we'll look at just now that you've developed.
Absolutely. Okay, well, yeah, and that I just want to get to the
go ahead.
lessons, because I also think a lot of people on the group needs to also hear, gathering and summarizing some of those items that was valuable to us. Get your home security sorted. I've been saying that quite a while during this show. We recognize that you have to get your own home security sorted. And I'm talking about non-conventional ways as well. Putting an alarm system in your house, having it inside your house doesn't help anymore. I've studied myriad of farm attacks and myriad of break-ins, and they all, they could be, a lot of them, not all, but most of them can be prevented with early warning systems. It's very different from a town to or a village or a town to a farm, and we understand that. But there's a lot of things that we need to get into to say, well, get your own home security sorted first. So within the legal framework, also keep your firearm near you. I mean, let me tell you something. You did your firearm license. You had the competency for that. You lock it in a safe. But tonight when you sleep, your safe is not going to defend you with that same firearm. You're the one that needs to operate that firearm. And I'm saying this specifically because those of you who are licensed and competent to use it, you know what the legal framework is to use it at night. Make sure that it is safe. Obviously, that's your own prerogative. You have to go through a process, but it's not going to defend you. You have to pull the trigger, not the safe. So just keep that in mind, because I saw a lot of the reports that came in recently about farm attacks where farmers actually shot back. And this is going to become more of a news now because people realize, well, I can't ask the guy to wait until I find my safe keys, which I've hidden somewhere I can't remember, and then I take the firearm out, and then I'm not confident enough to help to use it. And I think Ian will agree that when I say things like Air Scouts as well, go out there to the shooting range and regularly shoot and practice, because you have to get confident. You have to understand how to grab it, use it, and quickly get into the right stance of attack, etc.
Right.
And Ian, you were saying something very important, Ian, about not necessarily using it. You want to get into other process. Just help me remember what you said. That was amazing.
I just want to go back quickly. It's actually this Sunday, Air Scouts. We're actually having someone who's very qualified on the matter, actually has gun dealer licenses and so forth. He's actually giving a talk on the amnesty and the legal position of what you need to do if you want to surrender, what you need to do if you relicense. So we're really trying to help people to keep everything above board. So that's this Sunday. Again, if you want to attend, then there's that email address that Adriaan has given out.
Adriaan, could you put that in the side chat again?
Yes, I can do that for you, sir.
Yeah, carry on, Ian.
Yeah. So we basically, if we're going to have gun owners, we want responsible gun owners. And we've had situations here where a gentleman was killed with a pellet gun. He was shot point blank in the chest with a pellet gun. And that's really the kind of thing that we do not want, okay? We want people to be responsible and also know when not to use your firearm, use lethal force, because you actually, it's very easy to talk about, I'll just shoot the guy. But the reality is obviously a lot different to that. It's really only a last resort. And I think one of the key things of firearm ownership is to know when to de-escalate the situation. If a taxi cuts you off or somebody annoys you in the traffic, you just got to be able to let that go, because it can escalate into something that is completely ridiculous. So sorry, yes, Adriaan, you're talking about something. Just jog my memory there quickly again.
So when we had this discussion this afternoon about using a firearm, the goal is not actually to use it. So I wanted you to tell the people who's listening now the same thing.
To my mind, you don't want to use it unless you absolutely have to. And if you have to use it properly. That's really what it boils down to. I hear a lot of hot air people talking about what they would do. And then when you actually drill a little bit deeper, they actually have no means of doing it. I'll just shoot the guy. With what exactly? Okay. Because when you are a firearm owner, you're doing everything possible to not use it. Even though you may be, say, carrying your sidearm, you still got, first and foremost, going to use your pepper spray. And then here comes the next thing, have your firearm ready. But there are a lot of people that not carrying a pepper spray. They don't have a flashlight. They don't have a lot of basics in place. You get your basics in place long before you even think about firearm. That's really what we're saying.
That's amazing, and that actually kind of leads me. Sorry, Scott.
Yeah, Ian. What I'd love to do is are you able to put me in contact with that fellow who's going to be talking to you on Sunday? Because I think that subject is such an important one. I'd love to have him on a live stream.
We may be able to sort that out, Adriaan. I think if we
can for sure. Maybe get those I'll send you his details.
Or even if we either live stream it or we video some of it. I think there's a way of doing that somehow. But you've got to bear in mind, though, Scott, we may have people there who it's a little bit sensitive. The licenses may have lapsed or some.
Oh no, I'm not talking about doing it live at Dalstrom.
Yeah, okay.
I'm talking about like here. I just talk directly to that guy about this issue.
Yeah, we would have to get his agreement on it. But,
yeah, sure.
It's a possibility. It's a possibility. Yes.
Okay.
We can certainly look into that.
All right, back to you, Adriaan.
Yeah, I think another question I have for Ian. Again, I'm kind of draining his brain here now, but the other thing that you were alluding to as well, with the basics being correct in a grab bag. I've had one and it weighed 11.5 kilograms, so I almost died when I picked that thing up and walked 2 blocks. But here's the thing. I kind of think that I want you to talk to the woman, for example, now. If daddy's working late or if they are not at home, my question is, for example, what would you suggest being in, close to your bed, close to in a small bag somewhere for the girls, that they understand when they have to go outside or go inside the house, whatever. What is the best thing to use, to have in your bag? Sorry.
I would say it's whatever you would need to, let's say you need to keep over at someone else's house, what you need for around about 3 days. So you're going to need a toiletry bag, whatever meds that you take, contact numbers, maybe a spare charger or battery pack for your phone. I'm amazed at the number of people that, and women especially, that don't carry a pepper spray. I actually keep one on my keys, so all the time, and that's obviously preferable to using lethal force. Obviously, I've been pepper sprayed. I can assure you, it's the kind of thing you will only do once. Okay, it's not fun. Okay, they do work.
Okay.
So basically, it depends on who you are and what your priorities are. But you've got to have something. If you need to pick up and go, you need a change of clothes, a change of undies, your contact numbers. You may need a copy of some of your paperwork, or even scan that and put it online in the cloud. You've got to be able to pick up and go. And we've been stressing here about man-made disasters, about violence and protests and so on and so forth. But in fact, we've had tornadoes in Dollstrom. We've had weather events where a tree has fallen onto somebody's house or some such has happened. And so it may not be a man-made disaster. It can quite happily be a natural disaster that you have to respond to. And that being the case, you want to be able to lock up and get in the car or get in someone else's car or even run and find shelter and to be able to survive. So it's very easy for us now to keep on about man-made disasters, but we have to bear in mind we've also got natural disasters, and COVID-19 is as far as we know, it's a natural disaster, and right. We're having to learn how to cope with that. It's not been easy. When we first went into lockdown, nobody had a clue, and now we're kind of learning how that works. And we've actually, Audra and I have had this discussion where we looked at some of the things that we've learned from COVID-19, for instance. So, for instance, it's very difficult to get accurate information. A lot of people will grab onto a bit of information and publish it as if it's fact. And we've had contradictory views from scientists. Wear your mask, don't wear your mask. It can be spread airborne. No, it can't be spread airborne. We've had contradictory information from medical experts. So we're learning, COVID-19 is, to all extents and purposes, a natural disaster that we're learning how to live with.
Okay, I just want to get back to, you were mentioning pepper spray. Now, if you search on YouTube for pepper spray, you will see how easy it is to actually make your own pepper spray. And obviously you need the right bottles to actually spray it with, but it's not something you have to pay a lot of money for.
Oh, no. I mean, In some places, you can buy it at Checkers at the checkout. Okay.
Okay,
by
well-
the way, I have a bar one and maybe some Smarties and a pepper spray.
That'll come in handy, yeah. So I love that. I think Scott, just to get in there, Ian, I like the fact that you have these DIY things that you can go and do. I encourage people to actually go and read up, and that's part of the whole find out for yourself and ask questions kind of thing, because you'll run into something that will give you an idea for something else that may actually solve farm attacks. There's a lot of innovative ideas that came up in a discussion we recently had with how do you prevent farm attacks from happening. And so hooking on to what Ian is saying, something that simple. The key here with anything, and this is how I understand it, looking at all of the different reports and reading and putting some categories together, is that, when the perpetrator arrives, his biggest fear at that moment is to be caught. So he needs the element of surprise. But when you look at the people inside the house, usually the soft targets, okay, they are afraid to be attacked and be caught off guard, okay? So you need to kind of get into this play where your security system or whatever you're using, you need to be able to use that pepper spray confidently early enough, the moment that guy thinks that you still don't know he's there, because that's also part of the effective attack, okay, or the effective retaliation, because otherwise they will, and I mean, I saw some of the live CCTV footage, they will just start shooting in every direction. So the concept is, if you don't own a firearm and you're going through the process, just arm yourself with something in the meantime. Okay, so that's the concept. So pepper spray is a simple thing. You get two kinds as well. I've learned the other day, you get a fog one that sprays like a fog kind of idea, and then you get a stream. It's like a gel stream or something, which if they try to wipe their face as well, they kind of just make it worse. So it has a reach. And then there was other things that I saw that was that can, for women specifically, that can add a distance. It has some, I don't know what, but it's got a high power spray to it, so it can go quite a few meters as well.
Wow.
So if you feel uncomfortable, to immediately start doing something about it. And I want to encourage especially our women and children, when you go to buy these things, to also learn how it works and read it, understand it.
Yeah.
There are people that will show you that, and that's the idea, because when you're in shock and you grab that item, there's usually like a cover over it, so you don't just press it by accident. You have to lift this cover still, and then you have to press the button or the spray area. And I want to just say this is, we live in such a difficult time. It's a very unstable time. So when you do feel uncomfortable, and usually women have this thing called intuition, and they are usually always right. I'm scoring brownie points for that statement. But the idea is that when you do feel uncomfortable and people don't listen to when you say no or please keep your distance, don't be afraid to use it. It's a non-lethal method of doing things, and we've got too much women and children crime going on, and that's in the increase as well. So don't feel afraid to use it, but go in and be confident enough to use it, and understand that there's first a warning and then the process. But you have to start using that to protect yourself.
Right.
So
Now,
I'm going.
can I just take up a question I see in side chat? Davin Hansen has asked. Viking Boer has asked. No, it's not it. Hang on, sorry. Sentinel Projects has said the veteran they are talking about, is that General Roland de Vries?
That's him, and I had two people WhatsApp me right now a few minutes ago with the same name, and that's exactly the person we need to get online.
Right.
So that's exactly him. And
there you go, Sentinel. You got it right.
There we go. So that's the guy, and we really need to listen to him. And
right.
He's got a lot of knowledge, and I'm struggling very hard to find his books, because we want to try and see, securing your neighborhood and that
sure.
kind of community part of it. We need to get that, and we need to get into a place where we start looking at that in conjunction with how other groups are planning and preparing and making sure that protection is there for the community.
Right.
Oh, Jenkins, sorry, can I interject there quickly?
Please do, yeah.
Sure. We've kind of gone through this a few times, where somebody gives a speech or comes over to Dalstrom and has a talk, and everyone sits there and it's like, yes, absolutely, back it 100%. And actually, Adriaan himself had this some time back, and you get the community support. Everybody's in until it comes to doing something, and then suddenly, where's everyone gone? Yeah, okay. Guys, it's going to be difficult. You're going to get pushed out your comfort zone. I'd rather be pushed a little bit out my comfort zone every day than be kicked out of it completely, be blindsided.
Right.
So I think, yes, it would be fantastic to get this guy to come to Dollstrom and to hold a workshop. But then we've got to walk away with an action plan. And I don't mean that collectively, I mean at an individual level. What are you actually going to do about it? Because yes, it's going to take effort, and it's going to take some money, and it's going to take discussion and improvisation and so on and so forth. It does take resources. You can't just walk away there with the feel-good factor and then go back to doing exactly what it was that you were doing or actually maybe weren't doing before. You really need to internalize what's being said in these and actually do something about it. And it's uncomfortable. We talked about warrior spirit. If you want to go for a run, it's going to burn. Your legs are going to hurt. Your lungs are going to burn, and it's a lot of effort. And it's the same thing with the security. We can't just keep having meeting after meeting and feel good security meeting after feel good security meeting, and everyone just goes home and does exactly the same thing again. I don't believe that that's going to be effective.
Okay, now, Adriaan, you got something on the screen here. What's that all about?
Yeah. So I'm not going to read all of this, but I want to hook on to what Ian is saying about comfort zones and those meetings we had. I've got about, I think it's about 68 letters that I wrote like this when we started originally with a forum then. And I kind of gave it up because of the lack of interest a lot. And we must also kind of qualify that. There's not a lot of lack of interest. There's also, in a small town like this, most of the people staying here, they also run businesses. And so it's quite a long, and most of these businesses are manager and owner operated. So they are tired, they can't go on patrols at night, and you fully understand that. So we need like something unconventional, and we need something technological and those kind of things. Mm-hmm. So I just want to show you something. Look at this date, 8 March 2019. Remember that day when I had that meeting, Ian, we were talking about a town emergency plan for all residents. And I want to highlight these things in yellow. For example, this was just before just when the lockdown was announced. I kind of highlighted the things that we're suffering. These were the kind of preemptive things that we had to plan for then, and that's why we had some of those meetings. And we got people excited and say, okay, let's do this. But for example, food supply shortages, infectious disease outbreaks, felt and forest fires, severe summer storms, including natural disasters. I'm laughing about this because looking at this now, we went through this meeting, and in that meeting, or not in the meeting, but after the meeting, I got 3 specific messages from people in town that says, you are making people panic. You are not, what is the chances of infectious disease outbreak? That's not even close. And the other comment was, pretty much everything is under control, but look at this. And we've experienced it since this letter afterwards. So don't look at me. I know nothing about these events, by the way, but I do say that there are things that's on this list that is not even touched on yet, like things like disasters that's man-made. Things, terrorist attacks. I mean, look at ISIS, and that's a whole different story. We can go live on that sometime, and I love how Ian goes into that process as well. Wild animal attacks in our area. And I was listing these things, and I said, we need groups who can go and think about this and come back and compare this to our own municipal disaster management plan and see that we have something going. And then that was then March, 8 March. And this year, March 26, I think, if I'm correct, Ian, then the lockdown was announced. So so then you have suddenly infectious disease outbreaks. You've got food supply shortages. You're in a lockdown. You can't really go anywhere.
You've had riots and looting.
We've got that. Exactly. And so this is the thing. That's why I'm on your live show, by the way, Scott, because I've always tried to tread on eggshells around people, because I love people and I don't like disappointing people, and that's kind of my personality. So when people say to me, no, stay away from this stuff, you're making people panic, I kind of, okay, yeah, you're right. But I'm kind of done with that because I also have kids that need the future, either in this country or somewhere else. And that's why I'm saying that we have to go through this process. So I'm showing you this because we've done this. It's there, it's ready. And that's why some of the systems were built, is to try and get that going. And it's like Ian says, and then when the work gets done, you get from 45 people, you go to 8 people that's really interested, and that really walks this path. And I must say, you get quite a lot done with smaller groups, but on the same side, you need people to then somehow get involved on a different level.
Now talking about the plan, are you able to now demonstrate this plan you've got with the map and the overlays and all that sort of stuff? I think it's quite extraordinary.
Yes. Correct. That's the next thing. That's collecting actionable intel. And that's where one of the things that I learned from one of the people that was speaking on your live shows, and I didn't make their notes, but there's the email, by the way. Sorry. So here is a bit of a quick overview. We call this an occurrence book. It's something that's been used by security companies a long time. It's an electronic version of it. But the only reason I've called it that is because that was what I'm used to calling these.
Now that's Dalstrom.
That's Dollstrom. So what we do is we start capturing incidents, in different categories.
Now, I just want to go through those categories because it'll be too small for people who are watching. Can you go back to those categories for me?
I can, but I'm even going to make it a little bit more simpler, just to bring in the live system here. So you're going to have some live statistics going.
Right. This is on your website.
Okay, so this is the system that we did for collecting that information, and this is the map. So it shows basically daily incidents that happen. So for example, on the left-hand side, when we go into the filter.
Okay, now just hold it there for a second. Under the categories, you got operational reports, health and safety, municipal services, social services. Oh, that's better. Now people will be able to read that, I think. Let me just see it on the screen here. Because the trouble with small text is it just looks garbled.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
So is that better?
I think that'll be better for people who want to read it. Okay. So now that you've done that, you can make it smaller again.
Sure.
Because we would want to obviously see what's going on. Okay. So so what happens? How does this work?
So pretty much how this works is all of the incidents that we then log on the system gets GPS located. So as I'm moving this map around, for example, and I zoom into a specific area, whether it is on a normal road map version or satellite version, I can see, for example, the cricket pitch was there and there was an incident that took place in this area.
Right.
This little red, I don't think you can see it, but there's a red little marker on the screen.
Yes, I can see it,
The center of the coordinates, and it puts it up here, and then we can go into the occurrence date, what time it happened approximately, what was the type. So in this case it could be like a farm attack, for example, or it could be a break-in. And so when you select that, it falls under a specific category, and then you can have a very short description. What we've done with this process as well is when it is, for example, municipal, like for example a water outage.
Right.
I'll delete this later, but if it was a water outage, ABC123, and you say that it's probably been experienced in a 200-meter radius, what it does is it allows you to then send an SMS alert to everybody in that area around that dot to say, here is your case number for the community. We are just letting you know that we have received this complaint, and then they can reply to this and say, yes, my house is also out, etc. So this was one of the solutions that we found to just get people to be in the know. That's what's happening around them, because a lot of the houses are empty, not empty, but they're guest houses, etc. So the idea was to let the owner know that there is a water problem right now, so that they can let the guests know, but at the same time also, switch off geysers and things that rely on that water source. The other idea that we had was to say, okay, well, we need to find out what is happening around town and where. So these little mannequins you see here on the screen, these are foot patrols, for example, and Ian has what we call a live patrol app. So he starts a foot patrol in an area, and it will log his track all the way around town or wherever he was for record purposes later. And as he walks, he can put reports down on a map to say there's a water tower in Blue Crane Drive, the fence is bad, high risk area. Or, for example, good hiding spot, etc. So we can map the town based on a lot of items. You can also toggle those live patrollers, so to see actually where they're walking right now when they've given permission on this app of ours, okay? The other idea is then to switch off the incidents and start seeing where hotspots are forming in this town with specific categories, etc. And then you know where to focus your resources, because this is a problem we're having is, you're starting to fix minor things, but the major stuff needs attention. And where is it constantly breaking? So that was the idea.
Okay, what is that hotspot there? Yeah. Is that like the council, or that one there? Yeah.
So for us, currently I've got everything switched on. So in this category, it is mostly operational reports. So that means that most activity happens here. And I'm not going to call out names, but the reason why this is hotspot is because this guy's very active in hidden patrols and foot patrols. He's logging it, but he wants to give his community service back. So if you want to see who's doing most patrols in your town, you can do it this way.
Right.
But if you toggle this, for example, if I go and say, okay, show me all the incidents from, for example, January after the 31st of December, so it's from 1st of January onwards, and just show me security and protection incidents, which includes housebreaking, etc., and farm incidents, and we apply that, then suddenly the picture looks a little bit different. Okay. Wow. Now I'm going to toggle these incidents so you can see now suddenly you've got other hotspot areas.
Right.
And the reason why this is happening in our area or in this area, this block, is because if you look at the satellite view, we've been able to identify that there are roads leading in the back here on this map. And there are exits into the main road. So people, the crims start entering town from this part. They try their luck everywhere as they're going. And by the way, one of these incidents, I've got CCTV footage, is my house, where they jumped my wall now, not just over a month ago, and 3 thugs were jumping my wall, and the CCTV alarm picked them up, and I was able to chase them away at that point, because they were not in my house, but they were at the wall, at the window at that moment. Right. And that's why this area is highlighting up like this. So we, as a block area, can say, okay, well, in our block, we can see this is an entrance for them. So then we can actually do something about it. And that's why we are talking about collecting actionable intelligence. And now if you combine all of this together with a live patroller, if you have to respond to a panic, because it has a panic, and the members press a panic, our trouble is to get the patrollers to go to specific points in order to see any movement out of that area in order to make arrests, rather than rushing to a scene and risking lives, etc. So it helps. That was the concept. That was the idea. Currently, I think it's myself and Ian that's using this program.
Well, I think it's fantastic. I think what you really need is a big organization who sort of has that synergy to be shown this, because I'm sure they would adopt it, and that's why I'm thinking Boereligion, because that's exactly the sort of things that they do.
And you see, and ultimately, if I focus on something like, for example, this guy who's been really doing a lot of break-ins, and he's going through the court cases now. But the idea is that when you search for something, vehicle registration numbers that's unknown to you in your town, etc., you can find it very quickly by searching. And at the bottom, when you look at the original report, when there was confirmed 1 Bravo male walking up Marais Street, etc., and as we're talking on the radio here, this guy appears in front of my gate.
Wow.
TVs and wrapped it in that. So the idea is to be able to see this, analyze the data, and understand where's this guy in the process, because currently this is the guy who's going through the court cases that's been postponed so many times. So the eyewitnesses are there, they gave their reports, we attach pictures, we attach the reports, everything, we link incidents together. So we are really building up a good database, and Ian's been also a very good help in the patrol section to try and test the first responder applications and those kind of things. So yeah, so that was pretty much the idea.
So look, let's say, for example, I'm from, let's say I'm from Escort, okay? And I see this and I say, wow, I want to develop this or do this for my town. How do people actually set it up? Have you got like an application they download to their computer, or do they do it from your website?
So what will happen is currently, I mean, I've actually just done it for our town. I've got a place where I can create accounts here, and that's why at the end of the show, by the way, those who kind of sat through the last 2 hours, I want to say this, that we were saying that we can create accounts here for different towns. Here we've got Dalstrom, we've got certain security companies, we've got some things that we can do from this perspective. We can create a new account, we can create an account owner who is the moderator for the app, and they can create their own users. And then what will eventually happen, and which we are working towards then, is that eventually be able to work a little bit smarter, because when you zoom out and you start looking at what's happening in Leidenburg, in Belfast, essentially you get eventually a very big view on this.
You get a heat map.
So exactly. And so the ownership of that data would be somebody who really will need it to enforce certain security law, etc. But we were willing to say, listen, we have a campaign, and if I may go into that, Scott, with your permission,
please go.
I'd like to just do the following and say, we were saying that we have a smart town safety initiative that we're starting, and we've got a few funds that has already been given to the town, of which we bought two-way radios, and this funding that we are trying to raise is quite for a lot of things. So you can go and have a look at this Go Get funding. I'll put the link in the chat as well. And we said that if there are towns that go through the same process as us, and that they can separate, even if it's just 10 Rand, a donation to Dollstrom to help us kind of enhance our self-sufficiency and our security plans that we have, we are willing to actually give this application away to that town for them to use, whether it's for the CPF or any forum that wants to use it. But there is some process that you're going to have to go through with us in order to make sure that you're using it for the right reasons. Okay, right. So that's the only requirement. But we're willing to give this software for that town and help them get it set up and going. So the smart cities concept was to exactly do that. And so all of this that you see here, sorry, I'm jumping a bit, but okay, so the smart safety initiative, it includes the process for Air Scouts as well. If we're going to get kids in here, we've got a lot of liability, and we need to be able to say, okay, look, if we get them here, we need knowledgeable guys to come out here and also help us through that process and make sure we've got enough life-saving jackets, or I don't know what it's in English, but it's one of those jackets you put on when you go on a dam, for example. I'm not sure what you call it. I'm so sorry. It just went out of my mind here.
But you know who else would be? You know who else would be really interested in this idea? Have you heard of Michael Tellinger?
The surname sounds very familiar.
Yeah, he's actually in your area. He's just south of you, and he's developing what they call the smart city concept, where the city actually works as a community, and it's I think you'd find what he's talking about very interesting. A very smart man too.
Okay, well that's good, because
in fact, what I suggest you do is after this live stream is just go to YouTube and search for Michael Tellinger, and it's Tellinger, Tellinger, and you'll see his YouTube channel and some of the things that he's talking about.
Absolutely.
Adriaan, can I just interject very quickly?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, you're welcome. Yeah. Please, yeah.
One of the things that this is where I've got a little bit of an argument with Adriaan. And he's developed some amazing technology there. We've been testing it on the ground. We've been debugging it, and it's actually starting to work really, really well now. One of the problems we have is obviously finding the guys to go do those foot patrols or do the vehicle patrols. And so what tends to happen in all of these situations is when you have an outbreak of, in our case, it could be motorbike thefts and so forth, then everybody's very keen. Everyone wants to get on. The problem is when it goes quiet, nobody's interested, or it's cold, or it's raining, or that kind of thing. And so to my mind, if you're gonna sign up for this, you've got to sign up for it. And the idea is to keep the number of incidents down. We tend to have a little bit of like a fluctuation. So something happens, there's a few robberies, there's a few incidents, and everybody wants to get involved. And of course, people do get involved, and of course, the situation goes down. Then what happens? Everybody loses interest. So it tends to kind of wax and wane like that. And I think one of the things that this is, again, where Adriaan is very good with this, with the software, and I'm talking from a first responder point of view, is if you're going to sign up. And the idea is to keep the situations low. That means you're doing something right. It's too easy to say, well, nothing's happened for a couple of weeks, so I'm not going to do any patrols.
Adriaan?
Sorry, yeah, you were.
So I kind of lost you guys there for a second, but I'm back online.
Okay, look, I'm going to go to the little boy's room, so I'll leave you guys to talk. I'll be right back, okay?
Sure. Okay, sorry. Ian, you were saying I'm back now?
Yeah. Just to recap, what I was saying, this is where you and I have had some disagreement, a little bit of disagreement previously, is where the software is fantastic. I mean, it's absolutely incredible what you've done there. The Patroller app is now working. We're debugging that, and it's working really well. The problem is that is getting people to do patrols, be that foot patrols or vehicle patrols, and we all have our lazy moments and times we don't want to go out. And then what tends to happen is we have a few incidents, and everybody wants to get involved. Everyone's enthusiastic, and everyone kind of gets fired up. And of course, then what happens is the number of incidents drops, and everything kind of comes back to normal again, and then everybody loses interest. And then it spikes back up again. So we tend to have like a wave. It tends to rise, fall, rise, fall, rise, fall. And what I'm saying is, with an organization, if you're going to set up an organization like this, there has to be a buy-in. If you sign up, you've got to sign up for it. You've got to be there, even if it's cold or even if it's raining.
No, for sure. That's kind of the whole idea, is that, and I still see a lot of people saying, you can talk as much you want. The thing is that
okay, I'm back.
Yeah, talk is definitely okay, cool. So yeah, talk is definitely one of those things that people are doing, and I agree fully with you. You have to get buy-in, and those guys who commit to this need to actually be able to go through the different things. For example, the medicals. For example, what you're doing with Air Scouts, and that's why I absolutely believe that that's the most wonderful thing to do. Because where do you start? Where do you start? So. Okay, so that's a big thing that he was mentioning, Scott. The moment the heat goes down, for example, now suddenly there's not a lot of break-ins anymore, and it's just kind of disappearing off the scene. Then everybody that wants to respond at that very moment and that was fired up then suddenly disappear. Well, now I know it's not something that you have to go and march your streets, etc., but it's to actually constantly give feedback, constantly give information, constantly check up and follow up on information. Because I want to add to what Ian is saying. We've had quite a lot of break-ins with TVs that were stolen a while ago, and I am always asking the question, I'm sitting in those witness seats, and I'm at one specifically, I'm a state witness, and I'm going in there, and then what they do is they just pretty much say straightforward, look, all the witnesses are not here, so we cannot continue, because they don't arrive or they're not interested. And I found that that's kind of the comfort zone that people settle into. Look, I've made my case, I've got my case number, and I'm going to just get it from insurance. That's kind of the way. But they don't actually follow through with a court case as well. They don't go there to make their statement. They don't go there to listen to and face the music afterwards. And so, yes, it's kind of time wasting and so on. I find it out. I mean, you arrive there at 7:40, you leave there at 2 o'clock only to hear that it was postponed. So I know that. But the thing is that they very easily use your lack of interest as a reason to postpone.
Well, I have to tell you, Adriaan, that just a week or so ago, I had a live stream that went for about 2.5 hours with a huge protest at Naboomspruit, which is an area where there was a farm murder. And they were protesting because the three guys who were arrested for committing the murder were seeking bail in the magistrate's court. And, of course, the whole community was outraged. And what happened was, after about 5 or 6 hours of waiting, the translator had somehow had a flat tire somewhere, and he refused to aid, and so they had to postpone the court case, which is exactly what you're talking about. And you had about 1,000 people, members of the community, who'd come in there to protest, waiting for the response of the magistrate. And he said, "Oh no, we'll now put it off to the 7th of October." And that's exactly what you're talking about.
I was in that call, and I was constantly on the chat. I was saying, just get the guy with the damn flat tire and go and fetch him. It doesn't matter what he said.
Yeah.
We can kind of buy him a damn tire if we have to, but if the translator does not arrive at that Naboomspruit case, they're going to postpone it. And remember, there was that instant report of October. It's going to be postponed to October, and we couldn't confirm that information at that point. But what happened? It was postponed to October, and so this is the whole point. I've got all of this information in my head, all of this research on all these cases, and I can tell you the process flow. That's going to happen. So that was the idea. So yeah, I fully agree with you, and I think that there's a lot of work that needs to go on the top level. We've spent a lot of time talking about the protest. We started there. Went through that process again. We kind of see what's happening. What is our rights? How can we go through the process? And also, this was to tell you guys what is our process. Our action plan and the way forward.
Look, I have to say that I take my hat off to you, because you're actually doing something, and you're not a keyboard warrior. You're actually making things happen. Is there anything else you want to add to?
He made the most. He made the most amazing comments that led to this, and like I say, I think we're a group of about 10 that I can name on the two hands that really made this happen. So thank you so much. I appreciate the compliment.
Yeah. No. Look. Do you want to say who's been involved? Just give them a shout out.
Well, small town politics, I'm not going to name names because I'm also scared I miss it, and some of them are really rough and tough, so they'll definitely rough me up when I name names.
I understand. All right. Look, if we've covered everything you wanted to discuss, Adriaan, is there anything we haven't covered at this stage?
No, I think that's it. I think if Ian has anything else he wants to add to this, then he's welcome to.
No, I think that what we need to do, Adriaan, is put the email address up there, and so we can get some feedback, and be it positive feedback, be it negative feedback. I think it would be some constructive criticism would be good. I would encourage people to get involved, but get involved in a responsible way, in a level-headed way. And just thanks, guys, for setting this up and for the interaction. And have a safe evening and a great weekend.
Well, I have to say, Adriaan, that your PowerPoint presentation was fantastic, and the Smart Town Safety Initiative, which I think is the map with all the overlays, I think that is absolutely incredibly smart.
Well, thank you so much. We're going to try and build out, and that's why I say the more people that get involved to use it, the more we're going to expand on that, and eventually we will have the ability to do some other great, amazing, innovative stuff. Because what I didn't show you was the integration with, I don't know if you know the DJI range of drones, for example. DJI's drones that they've built. They've got a software development platform. And what this application also does with that crosshairs that you saw there was it can send a message with the coordinates to our own custom-made app for our first responders. So when they hone a drone, that's kind of what they're doing. But the difference is that it is in a controlled environment and the flight is monitored. And Ian came up with this amazing idea of having, a grab bag for them with a spare battery and with everything else. So if you do get into a place where you need to go and see how do you, you have to land in a place, the first responder can actually change the battery and you can keep on monitoring. And so these were kind of the drones that I just want to show you.
Wow.
So it's,
how much do they cost?
Enterprise thing. Wow, these things go anywhere from 8,000 to 350,000. So it depends on what you want.
Wow.
And so part of our,
and that's
our
Rand.
funding plan was to, and that's in rands. So part of the funding plan.
I've been thinking of getting a drone, but the problem I have is if I crash the bloody thing, then I've lost all my money. How easy is it to fly them?
No, this is absolutely foolproof. Look, you can still crash it. I mean, there's ways to do it. But the first flight I had, I was extremely nervous. But it was so quick to get going with it. It's actually amazing. Remember that a drone has quite a lot of, well, it's got four. The quadcopters have got the four auto stabilizing features and functionality. Right. So when you fly this, it has so much built-in sensors and things that you can fly, and the moment it gets to a certain amount of meters from an obstacle, it will stop dead in its tracks, and it will not allow you to even fly near to that thing. So wow. There's so much intelligence built into these drones that it's actually amazing.
So it's got sensors.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's got, everything that it needs to kind of get going. So I'll show you something. I don't know if Ian is still on, but he will remember this. I think I did this the one day with the fires. We were focusing quite a lot on fires and how it was burning. And I just want to show you this. That's why we are opting in for this technology now. Right. Two pictures I took here. So this was a controlled burn, but you don't see it from down like this. You see only the smoke, and because you can see how dry it is. So in the high-end seasons, we're not allowed to make fires, okay? But because you can't see it, instead of sending somebody out there, we kind of just started using this drone as an exercise to see what do you see from a bird's eye view. And I don't know why I can't open this thing, but it doesn't want to go bigger. So I'm just trying to figure out what just went wrong here now.
Just while you're busy there, Adriaan, it's something that we have discussed with Air Scouts is drone support. So that would not just be changing the batteries. Of course, that allows you to keep your drone operationally forward, as opposed to having to return back to base, which effectively doubles your loiter time. But also, if there is a crash drone, the navigation skills to be able to retrieve it or so forth. So it's something that we have started to talk about, because obviously this is a technology that's going to be used extensively. Yeah. Is how do we incorporate drone support within Air Scout? It's just a discussion at the moment, but we are certainly putting some thought towards that.
Right. I think that's just an image.
I'm not sure if you guys are still there, but if you can hear me, something really strange is happening. I mean, I can't move my mouse. I can't do anything.
Oh, so no. It's kind of I hate it when that happens with a computer. All right. Yeah. Look, guys, I'm going to wrap up the discussion. I thank you both for your time. I've been absolutely blown away by what Adriaan's been able to achieve. And I will be asking General Isaac van Zyl from Boerelition to get in touch with you, because I think this smart town initiative with the maps is fantastic, especially for these little towns around South Africa. Yes. And I do suggest you go and have a look at Michael Tellinger's YouTube channel and see if there's an overlap there. And if there is, just send me an email and I will put you in touch with him by email, because he's a really smart guy, and he's up your way. He's very close to you.
Okay, well, that's amazing to know.
Yeah. Now, is there something you guys would like to say in closing to everybody watching this video now, or who might watch it later? Just a sort of general statement you'd like to make.
Adriaan, do you want to kick off with that?
Yeah. I'm a normal citizen and community member, like most of the people listening, and I want to let you know that it is tough times and it's going to get tougher. I don't think it's going to get better. It's going to get worse before it gets better. And I want you to understand that between all community members, we need to find that one, defining thing in your life that makes that will allow you to help your own community, not Dalstrom, your own community, your own neighbor. Look at yourself, look at your own life, get off the couch and just get going. Make a plan with your kids to teach them one skill that you've done in your childhood days. Go to a fishing expedition. Just take that time and do it, because that time that you have with your loved ones is extremely important right now, and the community that you have with your own people around you is extremely important. There's no time for bickering anymore. You can still fight, you can still get over it, but tough times are coming, and we need to be able to deal with that the right way. And we can only do it when we go do this in the faithful and the love way. And so let's put our minds together. Let's get out there and just get off the couch. Just do it, plan it, and get it off your list. And then you've got already a big win. So thank you so much all for listening for this amount of time. I'll keep doing what I'm doing, and I would love to hear on that email address what you guys are doing, and let's see how we can kind of cross-pollinate some solutions.
Fantastic. Ian, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. My appeal, I would say, is towards the younger generation. The Y generation, the millennials and so forth. Get out there. We're not military. The training that we're doing is not military. We really do try and have a lot of fun, and get involved. Don't just leave it up to us old graybeards. Get out there, go meet people, go try things. You're going to fail. We've all failed at these things. We've all made mistakes, and sometimes really silly mistakes. We're not superheroes. So my appeal would be to the younger crowd. Guys, come on, let's get involved. And other than that, have an absolutely super weekend. And really, I appreciate what you guys have done here.
Fantastic. Now, Viking Boer has asked, does Adriaan Lloyd have a Facebook page?
I think I answered on that chat earlier. I don't have a Facebook page. I kind of only activate it because I'm an IT guy. I don't believe in that. I think they can track you, but they can go and search. I have one thing that I will put up when they email me, where they can go and search for information or whatever they want. If there's something he wants to get in contact with, he's welcome to. Maybe he wants to share data or whatever. That's welcome. He can just send me an email and we can make a plan.
Right. Now the website that this concept is on is dssf.online. Is that right?
Yeah, so dssf.online is the members database for the community when the forum was in existence. So that's the constitution. That's what the group was about then. But the system is also there. It's /OB, so Oscar Bravo. So dssf.online/OB.
Right.
So that's our Dalstrom system. So if anybody wants to have access to something like that, they can just also email me, and they can actually choose their own name if they want it on a different name. So.
Great. Well, look, I just have to once again commend you for your innovation and your involvement in Dollstrom. I think the town should really embrace what you're doing. I think there are a lot of towns around South Africa who would love to have you guys in their community doing this sort of stuff. It's quite extraordinary.
Well, that's amazing. Ian, where do you want to really, really stay in your life? In Cape Town, where? Where do you really want to stay?
Adoption's fine, eh?
Awesome. Then that's where we will stay.
Okay, cool.
Good.
Alrighty. I just want to say to our moderators, thanks guys for doing a wonderful job on the side chat, as you always do. For those who've been watching this live stream, I hope you've learned something. I certainly have. I find this new technology fascinating. It's quite extraordinary, and I think it is a big part of the solution. I'm going to wrap up now. Once again, thanks Ian, thanks Adriaan. And look, if you've got something that's coming up that you'd like us to cover, I mean, maybe you have a huge new development in your smart town program, just give me an email or contact Marlena, and we'll get you back on again to talk about it.
Yeah, we have
Thank
got
you
some
so much
ideas.
for
I'm gonna run them by Adriaan over the next few days, is where we look at data links and so forth. But that's a new discussion.
Okay, fantastic. All right.
Great. Thanks, Ian. Thanks so much for your support and time. You guys have a good evening.
And what I'll do is I'll send you guys the link to this live stream so you can percolate it right around Dalstrom and get people to get off their asses.
Brilliant.
Okay. Thank you so much, Scott. Have a good evening.
Thanks.
Well,
Scott.
a good day for you, Scott. For us,
Okay.
a good evening.
You too, guys. Okay, take care, everybody.
Take care.
I'm going to shut off the live stream, but I'll keep the side chat open for a few minutes so you can say your goodbyes to each other. But take care, and don't forget, tomorrow night, Saturday night, we have another jamming session. And on Monday, I've got a special program on Monday at 8 p.m. I've got David Coltart, who's actually often interviewed by the BBC, and he's from Zimbabwe, and he's an ex-senator. In fact, he was the Minister of Education in the early 2000s. And we're going to be talking about what is going on in Zimbabwe, which is going to be a very, very interesting discussion. And I've got a live stream again on Sunday night, so we're flat out for the rest of the week, 8 p.m. Johannesburg time, and a whole range of discussions. Please remember to subscribe if you haven't already subscribed to the lovely live channel. And take care, guys. Here we go. We'll